Greetings, brothers and sisters. Friday, November 21st here. When I taped this yesterday was Friday, November 20th. I forgot to do the greeting, so I'm putting it in here. And so the first part of this video was done on Thursday, and it doesn't really matter, but I'm just, let's get into it. Okay, so this is Brian Harpool. He was Charlie Kirk's according to Candace Owens, was paid millions of dollars to keep him secure, right? And this is, I think his name is Sean Ryan. I'm not sure who he is, but he has a podcast. And he seems kind of ex-military kind of guy, right wing. So Sky News showed a clip of this guy, Brian Harpool, which was then covered by Candace Owens, and I saw both of them. And I'll show that clip. That clip isn't as important to me as this one is. But Brian Harpool goes on this interview. It's like a 2-hour interview. And the parts that I saw of it, he's excusing himself of any responsibility or accountability for the failure that was his job to protect Charlie Kirk, right? Like you see in all these Secret Service movies, there's, not on my watch, right? They didn't kill the president on my watch. I wouldn't have ever, this kind of thing, right? But when you do a job like this, and this speaks to my spiritual, there's a way that you can protect your family and, yourself to whatever extent by wrapping them in a bubble of love. Like you have this feeling of love and you can surround them. There's been, in the ancient Indian tradition, there was, especially women were able to protect their husbands in war and protect people through this spiritual connection by putting God consciousness around them, physically protecting them and certainly spiritually protecting them. But, there's ways that you can move your consciousness. I started to learn to do this when I worked in my first treatment center, where kids had to be in earshot and eyesight at all time because they were little sex offenders and they were all victims. And so they could easily victimize each other or, get into weird shit. And so you weren't allowed they couldn't be allowed alone. And, one way that you can deal with that too is be able to sort of project your consciousness, right? And you're connecting to things. And, people have been able to do this where they connect with loved ones and they'll get an intuition about somebody, right? Somebody is going through something and they will, call them. You'll call them and you're like, what's going on? And the person's like, yeah, I'm in trouble, Like this happens all the time, that there's a connectivity. And so you have to heighten your awareness. And that you have to put your, the ideas out there. I mean, the human mind and the human heart and the human capacity is far greater than what we use. And so if you work at this job of being security, you have to expand your consciousness and make sure that there's no, that any detail, there should be some kind of a feeling that you have and go, I should follow up on this, right? I should make sure that this is, like if I'm doing my job, I got to make sure that any kind of intuition I have, any kind of, feeling I have about anything is that I follow through on it. This guy just doesn't do it. He just makes excuses the whole time. And so, here, let me just.
Why that wouldn't have been disseminated down to the security detail. I mean,
All right, let's go back just a little bit. So.
Got any detail or intel to show that we should look into this deeper.
I mean, it is very interesting that if he was that concerned about born nations or opposite political affiliations, I mean, if he was that concerned, I don't know why that wouldn't have been disseminated down to the security detail. I mean, I have a security detail, and if I feel that there is a threat.
Okay, so this guy, he's got a lot of guns and shit and alcohol.
Even if it's just a feeling, that's the first people that I tell is like security detail.
We looked at, we look at all that, and you can go back and look at his speeches, and Charlie was an absolute supporter of Israel. And
was he though?
He would say, and they would ask him why, and so we're in those things and we're listening, but at the same time you're looking, but you hear these things and you hear them over. And I can remember him saying, he was a supporter of it because one, a nation should be able to defend itself after they've been attacked. Two.
Okay. So because he was taking shekels.
Charlie was a devout Christian to the point that he gave his life for
So
it.
I've gone through this. Like the Old Testament shouldn't. Jesus evolved out of his religion. Any spiritual person does that, and that's a stage. You're born into a religion, and then you graduate from your religion, and you connect to God directly in some form, using whatever system. And so Jesus did that for whatever way that he did that, through meditation, whatever else. He did that. And so the Old Testament is just a piece of shit book, right? He evolved out of that religion. And so this relationship, the Judeo-Christian relationship, it's not a real, it's a bullshit relationship, right? It's two different things.
And he referenced this, and I heard him reference it, where those places that are our holy land are being taken away from us and not being able to visit, and that you can't go there. And
This
so-
isn't what I was minus. I wanted to show that guy saying that there was this feeling. Let me go back and find this. Okay, if I didn't say that earlier, I think I said greetings. Today's Thursday, November 20th. There's a video that's going up tomorrow that I've just made and it's being uploaded, even as we speak. And this video will be up Friday. So today's Thursday. That video will be up Friday. This one will be up Saturday. So I'm not, I got a bunch of clips to put in it, but this is going to be a video I make over a couple of days. And I wanted to lead with this because I had a reaction to this guy's total lack of accountability. Is Charlie Kirk's security guy. And so this guy says something good here.
A warfighter, a lot of times somebody on the team will have some type of a feeling or a premonition or, hey, we shouldn't be here right now, or something's about to happen. I don't have a good feeling about this. Did anybody you're on your team or Charlie, anybody, express any concerns about that day?
on that day, for us personally, when you walk in.
So that's a good question, right? I'll let this guy talk a little bit, but he doesn't answer it. He gets into the mechanics of the security.
We talk about workup, right? So we start the back workup, and then we're a little different also as far as our guys don't just get to show up. The team goes out, and we physically build all of our prevention model.
So he goes into this for a long time. I thought he said something else. I'm not sure if when I watched the Sky News crew, they said this, but he doesn't talk about anybody having any intuitional reaction. And, that's part of your fucking job. It is your job. Because, yeah, it's good being meticulous, but you also have to, there's the things that you can control that are seen, but you're trying to control the things that you can't see, right? And, another example of this, the preceptors that do the Sajmarg meditation, there was a young preceptor. Most of the people were older hippies, boomer hippies, and there was two guys. One was about my age, and one was about 5 or 10 years younger. They both lived in California, and this guy eventually moved, and we used to get sittings from him, my ex and me, years and years ago. These individual sittings, and this young guy started. He'd done a bunch of New Age practices, and they just didn't work. And he started with this preceptor, and so we'll call the young guy Preceptor A. And young guy compared to me, he's probably in his 50s now. I'm sure he's in his 50s. And he recently started doing the meditation, and he started playing Grand Theft Auto. Right, he was in the beginning of the video game generation, like I was at the Super Mario video game, Pong, Atari, then the beginning of what later became this this huge video game industry. And this guy started playing Grand Theft Auto, which is a very graphic video game, and he started to feel nauseous. He knew it was negatively spiritually affecting him, and he knew it was connected to the Sajmarg meditation, because you get sensitive to things that are bad for you. And he got nauseous, but he was up late and he decided to play the game again, and then he got really nauseous and he just stopped, and he realized it was bad. He went to bed. And the other preceptor, the guy that he started with, calls him up the next day. This guy's married, he's got kids, so and he said, what were you doing last night? And so the guy goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, I woke up in the middle of the night and I got this sense of you, like I was connected to you in some way. And I went to the bathroom, I threw up. Like I got physically nauseous and I threw up. And I said, what were you doing? The guy said, I was playing video games. And so he knew, that this was, there's this element. And when when you're in charge of somebody, or you're doing service for the system, and you're in charge of them as a preceptor, just like you are as a parent, you're supposed to expand your consciousness and make sure that you're aware of things that are unseen, right? Another example is this second master of the system, Babaji. He had this guy who came to visit him in his home. He used to have people come see him at his home, some Indian guy. And the guy said, he stayed with Babaji for like a few days. He said, can I stay longer? And Babaji said, yeah. And then he said, can I stay longer? And Babaji said, no. You didn't lock your door, back home, and I've been watching over your house for you, but I can't expend any more energy doing that. And so the guy goes, the guy's like, no, I locked my door. Like, you didn't say that. But so he goes back home. In India, they have these door locks where there's a piece of metal that goes over the deadbolt. And what you can do is sometimes you could lock the door, and it doesn't go into the deadbolt. Like, it looks like it did, but you didn't push the door closed enough. And that's what the guy did, and somehow Babaji picked it up on it, right? And so there's all these examples of this, not just in the Sajmark system, where people have a sense of things. How many action movies have you seen where the guy goes, I got a bad feeling about this? And almost all the time, there is something that happens, right? And so, like people who are hunters, or like if you're searching for mushrooms, or, you have to penetrate into a deeper level of consciousness. Like you're connecting with these. Fishing's like this too. Like there's an intuition, like you're connecting with it. And as a security guard, this is a security guy who's getting millions of dollars. Your job is to figure this fucking shit out, right? Like to make sure that you're aware on a deeper level. Now you could say, God wanted this to happen, or was part of his destiny or whatever. Okay, you can make a case for this. But this guy goes through the whole thing excusing himself and blaming other people. Okay, so this is the clip I saw from Sky News, and they were basically blaming the people he wants to blame. They were validating this guy's story, where Candace Owens played the same clip and was highly critical of this guy because he's getting millions of dollars. And so this is his level of commitment.
This correspondence went to Chief Long. Hello, Chief Long. We received this message today from the student group. There is a student roof access pretty close to where CK will be set up at the Utah Valley. The Sorensen Center has a couple of staircases that go up to walkways on the roofs. He comes back, and for edification, the Sorensen Center was the building in front of the Lucy Center. And so he comes back and he says, you want access to the roof. And came back and said, I was told students have access above us. If this is true, it would be nice to either have it controlled access or allow one of my guys to be there as well if possible. He comes back, and his last correspondence was, I got you covered. What else am I to do?
So Candace Owens that's raised her hand and say, follow up, which, like she wanted to answer the question. I mean, but I got you covered. Like that's his level. Oh, you got me covered? Then great. Because, this is the place that the alleged shooter, of course we know this is all bullshit, right? But, going on there and trying to show these text messages and pin this on this other guy, Commander Long, where everybody casts blame on each other. This was his fucking job. He had, he got millions of dollars to stop these things from happening, right? And, I mean, who knows if he's involved, what his level of involvement is. The less people that know, the better. But, he could have stopped as some kind of inside job or any of these things, right? I got you covered, and you didn't, that's all you're doing? Like, you don't go back? Like, there's an obvious place where, and again, the official story is that the kid got up on this roof, and we, most of us don't believe that's true. But he's trying to defend himself here.
When a command level person from an accredited police department says, I've got this area,
He didn't say he got this here. He said I got you covered. He didn't say, you asked the question, maybe you wanted to get a guy up there yourself, and maybe he just forgot about it, and you were supposed to follow up and put a guy on there. You should have asked him, what does I got you covered mean? What are you going to do? Like, you got to make sure it's covered to your standards. Like, how do you know this guy is going to cover it the way you would cover it, right? Like, you have to have your own quality control. What does that mean? I got you covered. Like, what do you mean by that? But now in retrospect, he's got this guy taking responsibility for an area where the problem was, so he can excuse himself. And the reason I'm showing you all this is because all these motherfuckers should just shut the fuck up, right? Like, when Alec Baldwin went on that disastrous interview, he was trying to, I don't know why he's trying to, if you go into a police interview and they're looking to pin the crime on you, and they don't necessarily care if you did it or not. They just want to, close the case, whatever it is, whatever their agenda is. They may or may not be looking for the truth. And so if you go in there and you say 90% good things that would help to exonerate yourself, but you say a couple of things that might incriminate you, all they're going to care about is the things that incriminate you, right? When you make videos and you make content, and you can say wonderful things for 2 hours and have one little slip up, and people use that slip up against you, right? And they'll do it completely out of context. And so they know they're being fucking, the majority of people in the truth community, Charlie Kirk fans, TPUSGay people who are, fan people, not the organization, are not buying the official story. And they're looking for people to blame, and they don't even know who you are and don't fucking care. And then you go on and do a 2-hour fucking interview and say shit like that makes you sound like you didn't do your fucking job. And then it's like, well, why didn't you do your job? And, anything else that's in this. I'm not watching the whole thing, but other people are. And I'm sure they're finding lots of things to go after here because, the guy should just shut the fuck up. Like, why are you doing this? What are you trying to salvage here? Like, you are culpable. Like, you should be fired, and, you had a job to do and you failed, right? Not on my watch. Not on my watch, right? That's what they fucking say. All these guys, right? It was on your watch, bro. It happened on your watch, and it's your fucking fault because it was your job. And whatever little excuses you have, regardless of, like, it was out of your control, whether you were in on it or not, that's how it's going to be seen. Like, when you go to apply for security jobs, are you going to tell them you work for Charlie Kirk? And they're going to like, well, were you in charge of that day? Yeah, oh, I'm good, right? Like, you're going to be, you need another line of work, right? You better have a fucking plan B because the security thing is over. And if they're still paying you over there, it just shows that they, this is a fireable offense is if you're security and you're there to protect one guy and that one guy gets killed, then you're like, you didn't do your job, right? And nothing you can say is going to make any difference. And the more you talk, the more guilty you look. So Candace Owens went on to cover how he said, this guy said, they wouldn't allow him to put drones up. But then this other guy from TPUSGay went on, Megyn Kelly, and said that this guy was flying drones. And so he's been caught in a lie. But this is the big one here. Towards the end of the video.
Old chief of staff. So the bullet came in and hit the vertebra. So it came in and then tore up everything. And
let's go.
Wound cavity hit the vertebra, crushed it, shattered it, turned, crushed the second one, turned.
Okay, so why did the bullet turn? Are you saying the bullet, again, it's like some kind of like 3,000 pounds of pressure or force that, would just go through a bone. Bullets are made to go through shit, right? There's an old video. There's a girl, and she wanted to be a successful YouTuber, and she wanted to do like prank videos, right? And she was constantly pranking her boyfriend, and just being shitty to him. She was like a horrible person. And she came up with this idea to shoot a bullet through a telephone book. And in front of her boyfriend's belly. You guys remember this? And they tried it by shooting it through a telephone book that was on the ground, and it stopped the bullet. So they thought that was sufficient testing. And of course, the bullet went through the telephone book and through the guy's stomach and killed him. And she went to prison. And, bullets go through things. And this was a handgun. I don't even know if it's like a 22. I mean, it's some low caliber, data. I mean, this is a powerful bullet coming through a high velocity rifle. And, why would it turn, right? So he's saying the thing turns. I mean, just why? Why did it turn? Like, why in the world would the thing turn? Like fucking.
It shattered. It turned, crushed the second one. Turned, kept going down all the way. I think they said C6.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's holy shit, because why would it do that? Like, this guy's got guns all over his war room here with his bar. He's an ex-military guy. And people had said this would go through a couple of mooses, right? I mean, you're saying it hit his bones and then just started going down. It took a 90-degree turn downward because it hit bones and crushed them and went through them and shattered them. But the shattering of the bones made it turn and then turned again. Like, what are you fucking talking about? Like it's just stupid, right?
It's like, why not put that info out?
Yeah, because it's not fucking true. That's why not.
Why not put it out? And then
Why wouldn't they put that out?
And if do me a favor, don't make me do it. It's not my job.
Well, for one, what do you mean it's not your job? Whose job is it? What do you mean? It's somebody's job to put that out? And you just put it out, right? Like that, it's like this magic bullet thing. Like, why would it fucking turn? It would just go through his, it goes through bone. Like, these things go through steel and shit like that, right? I mean, like, they do tests of how far these bullets will penetrate. And it would just go through a human bone. Like, it would go through, like, 4 necks or whatever it is, right? And so, it's just stupid shit. Like, it's just, why are you talking? Like, just stop. Why throw that out there? Because it's not fucking true. It doesn't make any sense, right? That's why they're not putting it out there. Why wouldn't they put it out there? And, because it wasn't the gun used, his grandfather's rifle, which is a weird choice. It's not, that didn't happen, right? We know that. Like, it's just a bullshit story. And so it was probably something at close range. If the guy, I mean, who knows if he's dead or it's a hologram? There's any number of things. But that's a bullshit story. And so when you're faking people and you're lying to them, you don't want to have things that are unrealistic and hard to believe. When you have an audience that's skeptical, that your audience is not believing in the official story, doesn't trust the government, and doesn't trust the media, you don't want to have things that are unbelievable unless you want those people to go down a rabbit hole. And so you feed them a bunch of shit that's hard to believe because you want them to follow the rabbit because, you're distracting from Epstein or something else. But other than that, if you want them to believe your story, you don't say shit like that. And the bullet turned. Why was it? Did it have, what do those things have? Like those rocket launchers have, those surface-to-air missiles have a way to track, they're heat-seeking, Was it somehow, the bullet was like, it was a smart bullet? Like it was, because the bones weren't going to make it turn. It wasn't going to make it turn 90 degrees, right? Like if, let's say it goes through something that's a little bit more dense, the bullet might change its trajectory a little bit, but it's not going to go 90 degrees. It isn't like the bullet was, all right, this guy's bones are way fucking too hard. I'm just going to go like all the way down his spine then, right? And it actually gets a little worse here.
Out. Why not put it out? And then
Why wouldn't they put that out?
And if do me a favor, don't make me do it. It's not my job. And so then it got to
Don't do me no, never mind.
here, and you're exactly right. And then hit, I think, 6, and then fragged. And so, explanation 101. What are you hiding? Yeah. It's like I'm sitting back here when people are saying we bombed him, or there's wound.
Okay. So, this isn't going to make those rumors go away. because that's not fucking believable. And so, you know, things go down the path of least resistance, right? You're saying it took a 90-degree turn and just started to go down his vertebrae, just started to go down his spine, and then hit C6, and it was like, that's too much for me. I'm just going to fucking implode right now. It turns into fragments. And so, I mean, just silly stuff, right? Fucking Jesus Christ, bro. Okay, so what he seems to be saying here, you know, it didn't hit C1, right? It didn't, you know, from the, I'd have to go back and look at the video, but I thought it hit it down here somewhere, right? Unless that was the so-called exit wound. And that's what they're saying. But we're saying that it went in here, hit the vertebrae, and vertebra, as he called it, and then takes an angle, not quite 90 degrees, and just starts going through all these various spines, and then shatters here, and that's the blood that you saw coming out. So I think that they were saying this is the entry wound, and then what you saw was the exit wound. And so it went all the way down the spine, like it's what, I mean, that's weird. Like a weird path of a bullet. Like it's almost like curving, you know, your spine curves. And that's coming out here. I'd have to go back and look at the video of the thing coming out, but just doesn't make any sense. Like, it's not believable. Like, why would it come in here if it's like a headshot and then go down this way? I mean, what did he have, like a fucking 3-inch metal plate in his skull? Right? Just, you know, bizarre fucking story. So, where it looks like the entrance wound is in terms of the video, I just went back and watched the video, is here. Somewhere around here. So what they're saying is that's the exit wound. So the bullet came in here somewhere. He didn't say which one. He didn't specify which vertebrae. And so the bullet came in here, which you can't see, and then it imploded here. The vertebrae shattered, and the blood came gushing out. So what you're seeing there is the exit wound. So that's what they're saying. Which, you know, if you go, there's all these 30-06 videos out there, like going through steel and going through Kevlar and, you know, bulletproof vests and all these kind of things, right? So there's no way this, I mean, it's just silly. Like, the fucking thing's just silly. So this is the 30-06 going through a simulated person's body, then blowing through this 2x4 here.
That is wild.
And so, you know, there's all these videos about this, going through steel, going through all kinds of things. I mean, just silly stuff, right? Like, it hit him in the neck, it just started to travel down his vertebrae and then came out and, you know, through something where people are like, why is that seems like an exit wound, he's probably shot in the back, you know, all these things. And that's their explanation. Of course they're not releasing that shit. The people tear that thing to pieces, right? This guy, you know, these are military guys talking about something. They know this. Fuck, how can they believe that that's possible? It's just silly. Okay, so I just put up my video and it's scheduled for tomorrow morning. And I was going to talk about cribs. You know, and I'll remember to do that in this video later. It was part of what I was going to talk about in terms of all that stuff at the end of the video. There's the biblical stuff and then there's modern stuff. You know, the crib is a jail for babies. And I want to talk about that in a bit. But here was this thing here.
Right now, our new special report focuses on the newly revealed emails, specifically between Epstein, the deceased sex trafficker, and one of the most important people in Donald Trump's orbit, which matters now. Top Trump campaign and White House vet Steve Bannon.
Sloppy Steve
made 15 hours of video of Epstein for what he called a documentary, and this was in a key period, months leading up to what we now know was his arrest and then death.
The future is for the way women think.
The way women think.
That's correct.
Is that not a sop because of all the depravity you've done against young women? And your new sop is that their women's thinking is the future?
No, I've always believed that women would be in fact be able to take over. I'm a firm believer and supporter of Time's Up.
Times, he's big into Times Up. Like, how did, like, fucking, dude. You remember Times Up was the whole, whatever that thing was that the women were pushing for. That he was like a fucking, the epitome of what that was about, right?
He's a supporter of Time's Up, he claims there. Many parties may now be extra interested in that video series or evidence. Bannon says he will release a film early next year. Epstein would also advise Bannon on his own message and media during a period when Bannon had left the White House on bad terms with Trump. He was trying to burnish his voice as some kind of global populist.
Number one, with populism, I think you're going to have people with much more control of their sovereignty and their citizenship, okay? And I think in nationalism, what you're going to have is a collection of robust nations.
The emails do not reveal whether Bannon could see the irony, some might say hypocrisy, of tapping one of the nation's most notorious coddled rich elites to advise him on the media around his so-called populism for the everyman. Now, much of Epstein's fortune remains a suspicious mystery. Indeed, we've talked to lawmakers who want to dig even deeper into his accounts and transfers and how he got his money and why
Okay, so the title of this video is The First Epstein Files, Magus Bannon Plotted to Redeem Monster Jeffrey Epstein. Like he was trying to rebrand him, but that, I mean, yeah, he was giving him a platform and a voice, so there's that. But, the rest of it, I mean, that looked kind of like not great, like he was talking to him like he was, a person that wasn't the world's most famous and controversial pedophile, right? So, whatever. But I wouldn't call that redeeming him. But it's, it wasn't bad. It was good for Jeffrey Epstein to be able to be out there and have a voice. Anybody who can become more human. This is why when they have these fake stage false flag events, you never hear from the killer. The killer usually is killed, but if they survive when there's a trial, you never hear them. There's no interviews. There's no, anything that would humanize them, anything that would make sense. They just, and then they can just dominate the narrative of the person. They can build a profile where the person is just a cardboard figure, and they can put anything on that cardboard figure they want, and that person can't defend themselves, right? So giving Jeffrey Epstein a platform is, not great for Sloppy Steve, but it's not, this was a clickbait title by MS Now, right? Formerly MSNBC. Okay, so briefly here.
Make it. Maybe only 4%. So we had long odds. But we had some brave women on the Republican side. My colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of them who's here with us today. You cannot even imagine the consequences that they have suffered. My colleague Lauren Boebert and my colleague Nancy Mace, they stood so strong. They put their names on a document in here, and then they were pressured in ways that you cannot even imagine. And they stood strong. And that's why we're here today. And they didn't take us seriously. So
just think that, I think that's accurate. Like, these are politicians who lie, but, this is how bad they're trying to suppress the Epstein files. Like, that's why you need anything more than that, right? I mean, whatever's in there that they don't want out, and it's really Trump. I mean, if it wasn't for Trump, these things would be out already. So Trump does not want stuff out, and we'll see what that is in terms of him and Israel. But whatever it is, this is how bad it was. Like, that's, the pressure and the consequences for these people to vote for something that everybody, all the citizens, there's no citizens out there that don't want this out. Like, there's no Americans who are like, other than people who are in it, right? But everyone else is like, yeah, I don't even care about it, but it's okay. They want to release it. They don't care. Maybe they think it's a distraction. But there's not anti-releasing Epstein list people. There's not a movement. There's not a lot of people that care. Either people don't care or they want it out. The people who care want the thing out, right? And depending on how much you care, there's people who it's their number one thing, right? The reason it passed is, I think it must have got like 100% to Democrat support, right? And they were saying there's no list before, so there's that. But the Republicans see that this is a devastating issue for them to vote against, right? And the ones that voted for it. But, it passed through. Like, and whatever it is, right, whether the people that turned on Trump, because there's people in the Republican Party that had to vote for this to make it go through. They have the majority in the House and the Senate. So then there was this here.
I proudly rise today in a bipartisan effort to release the Epstein files finally, after 5 administrations have covered it up. Earlier today, I attended the press conference where the survivors, they're not victims, the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's.
Yeah, that's just fucking word salad. I mean, you're a victim as long as you are, feel like you've been victimized, right? You're only a survivor when there's some element of, like, you realize there's a reason why everything happens, even things like this, horrible things. Divine reason, whether it's, there's some benefit in it. That's the only way you get out of the loop, the victim consciousness loop.
Sexual abuse and sex trafficking told their stories. And they told stories about how it started back in 1990.
Okay, I don't know what this is.
1,000 women. And they are victims of something that's unthinkable. And this should have never, ever happened.
All right, she gets into unleashes on the cover-up. Let's get to that part here. Okay, so this is the cover-up part.
And will foreign governments release their information? Or will this continue after release the information? Will the CIA release the information? And will foreign governments release their information? Or will this continue after this vote today be a cover-up? A cover-up of the rich, powerful elites that bond together in sex and human trafficking abuse and all types of global business that enriches them but never serves Americans. The American people will know, and the victims...
Yeah, so what? Great. They'll know, but no one will care, right? Before I just took a nap, so I'm glad I got multiple jokes for this one. Michelle Obama's lost some serious weight and looks almost sickly here. So when people talk about, like in this case, she's going to talk about all white people, or say white people, or if people talk about men or Americans or, whatever it is, right? I don't ever think it's about me. Like, I don't, humans, I mean, if it's something that would apply to me, right, then I'd be like, yeah, I do that, right? But if I don't get personal about, like, if it's Italians or Sicilians or Albanians or Germans or Irish, or any of those things. Like, I don't, people from Connecticut, like that's when I would probably agree with most things that are said. Like, I don't get offended by groups of people, subgroups of people that I belong to being disparaged in some way. Unless somebody's trying to do it personally to me, right, where they're making it personal. And then I don't get offended. I just, don't want anything to do with the person, or I might say something back just because, it gives me the opportunity to say something that I couldn't say otherwise, like I do with the comment section when people leave shitty comments. So none of this stuff I take personally, but I want to make jokes about it anyway, nonetheless. And so this happened.
Worry about it. Let me explain something to white people.
They're the worst, white people. Exactly. Fuck those white people. Let's explain all white people, because all white people do this. White people, let me explain it to white people.
Worry about it. Let me explain something to white people. Our hair comes out of our head naturally in a curly pattern. So
okay, so you don't think I know that, right? You're not. You don't think I'm just, and I'm like saying this personally, but that white people don't know that black people have curly hair. Like, you don't think people, seeing afros and whatever it is, right? I mean, like that's, when I was a kid, I really liked shows that were not about white people. Like, I really liked, there was only a few shows with starring black people. There's a show called What's Happening. There was 3 friends, Dwayne, Raj, and Rerun, Rerun was a fat dancer. He still does rerun stuff, like he's still milking that. But he could dance for a fat guy, and he was funny. And I liked that show. I mean, I liked that show a lot. I liked Sanford and Son, and I liked movies. I was just talking to my wife about, there's a movie where this guy was he was a young black kid, I think in New York, and they called him Bruce Leroy because he was a kung fu guy. So, Shaft and these movies. I liked, Native American movies. I used to root for the Native. I had some kind of, some kind of connection with the Native American culture. But I like diversity. Like, I like to see diverse things. I still do. Like, I don't like to read subtitles, but I really enjoy foreign movies. And now that they dub them, like the different ways of people being and, their cultural differences and things, I'm interested in, right? But, I think every white person understands that black people have naturally curly hair, right? I mean, not all of them, because you have different shades of, whatever. Some black people, like, I don't know. Does Meghan Markle's hair naturally straight? I don't know. Probably not, but you know what I'm saying. That there's curly hair, right? Just like there's lots of white people who have curly hair that have, and it seems like whatever you have, you want especially with women, and I think this is probably the case, that whatever you have, if you're a black person, you want to lighten your skin, but if you're a white person, you want to get a tan, right? If you have curly hair, you want straight hair. If you have straight hair, you want curly hair. It's like, it seems like whatever people always want what they don't have, right? But, to say that, like, white people are completely ignorant, like, what percentage of white people you think don't understand that black people's hair isn't straight, right? And that, like Asian and East Indian people have straight black hair, that their hair isn't curly, right? That they have to do something to make it curly or whatever it is, right? Like, I mean, it's really condescending.
Worry about it. Let me explain something to white people. Our hair comes out of our head naturally in a curly pattern. So when we're straightening it to follow your beauty standards, we are trapped by the straightness. That's why so many of us can't swim, and we run away from the...
So you're saying you're appropriating our culture? The straight hair culture? So that's one of the jokes. Another one of the jokes is, so is that why you tuck your penis, because of the beauty standards? Okay, so my microphone fucking ran out of batteries and I wasn't paying attention, so I got to redo this whole part.
People won't go to the gym because we're trying to keep our hair straight for y'all.
For y'all? Like, what do you mean y'all? Like, who are you talking about, y'all? You mean you think every white person is concerned about your hair being straight? Like, that's what you think is going on? I mean, people don't give a shit about other people. I don't know how many of these, let's go to the end of this. I want to talk about this at the end. I had like a 10-minute rant I went on about this.
It is exhausting, and it's so expensive, and it takes up so much time.
You could say that some of this stuff is, is built into the culture. Like, or, there's this idea that straight hair is somehow better. And, I know there's white women with curly hair that think this or whatever it is. And they go through, whatever lengths they do to straighten their hair. I mean, there's just a lot of obsession. But like I said, I don't know if I said this already. I think this is where I said this part. But as far as like, whatever people have, they want the other thing. Like, white people go to extraordinary length to get tan, to darken their skin. Putting on makeup is part of that for women. Also, just going to the beach and getting tan. And black people buy products, I mean, some of them, just like some white people, to lighten their skin. Women with straight hair want curly hair, and women with curly hair want hair with volume. Want straight hair. So when I grew up in the 80s, women had big hair, even men, like to fluff out their hair. They had these big blowouts with hair dryer trying to get more fluff, almost like a white afro. People always want what they don't have, right? And, people think, people are judgmental about clothes and shit like that, but those people are basically worthless. People judge you on your clothes or your makeup, and it's usually women judging other women. But nobody really gives a shit, right? Nobody fucking cares. Like you're making it like there's this overwhelming movement to make sure that black women don't wear like hair afros or whatever it is. Like, it just doesn't exist. Like maybe there's a handful of people I've never met, right? People that I don't even know. I mean, these have to be like white people live in the city that are, fashionistas or something. I got more to say about this. Let's go to
Braids are for y'all so we can work harder and focus on the work. So
what do you mean, y'all? Like, braids are for you all? Like, what do you think's going on here, right?
why do we need an act?
Okay, so, there are kids, again, I'm hoping I'm not repeating these things, because I don't know what part I included. There's a comedian named Chris Porter who he has a special from about 5 years ago. I think it's on YouTube. It's like something you can buy on YouTube, or it's on YouTube. And he's a tall guy with like clown hair, like Ronald McDonald hair, that kind of frizzy, curly hair, and he's going bald. And he was talking about these, he said, these loops that these young people have in their ears until they keep on getting bigger and bigger, these big holes, ear piercings that just get bigger and bigger. He says it gets bigger and bigger until it's a big fuck you to a job with benefits, which is a great joke, right? But now you see people with face tattoos and multicolored hair and, all kinds of weird shit, right? Dudes wearing fingernail polish. I mean, there's all these things that are happening. There's a quarterback for the Chicago Bears, that have all this kind of stuff. And, he has fingernail polish, Machine Gun Kelly, and they're pushing all this stuff. Like, there's more and more weird shit you see people doing. People trying to express themselves, right? In some way, it's not. I mean, it's just some superficial bullshit thing. It's more and more acceptable in terms of what people are hiring. My dentist's office, the secretary has like just tattoos. I mean, all the way up her neck and then everywhere, right? Like people who have just, completely tattooed, like, I mean, just in whatever's showing. And so people just don't give a shit about this. Like this blaming this, you don't have to do that. You could wear your hair any way you fucking want. You're a multi-millionaire. You don't have to straighten your hair.
An act of law to tell white folks to get out of our hair. Don't tell me how to wear my hair. Don't wonder about it.
Okay, where has that ever happened? I've never heard that ever happening. Like, I'm totally unaware of this, right? Where white people are making standards for you to wear your hair. Like, when has that happened? What, like she's saying, an act of law? Like, what are you talking about? Like, in what way are you talking about like gay white dudes that are in the fashion industry? I mean, who are you talking? What group of people? Let me just go to the end of this thing.
Don't touch it. Just don't.
Okay, so her saying this thing in the beginning. First of all,
worry about it. Let me explain something to white people.
Like, if you were, I'd love to hear a white person say that exact words. I would like to explain this to black people. Like, I would like to white-splain. She's going to black-splain this to white people. And just generalization. But, my best friend from high school was biracial. What he called it was mulatto. That was what the term was when I was a kid. And he had an afro. He lived with his dad, who was, dark-skinned. He was a black guy. He was dark-skinned. And his wife, I mean, his dad, he was divorced. His mom was a German. She had a German accent. And he looked like this guy, if you ever seen him, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Just the way he talks. Amon-Ra St. Brown has a blonde, white German mom and a bodybuilding black dad. And he was on this show called Receivers from Netflix. These are good shows. It started off with that quarterback show with Patrick Mahomes, where everybody learned that they hated Brittany Mahomes. if you see the show, right? But, you know, he's experienced some minor racism at school, and there was some prejudice. But he had, like I said, an afro when he was, like, I think a freshman in high school, and then he just had short hair after that. You know, I guess whatever. But, like, I don't remember him even be conscious of any of it. Like, I don't think anything that was, you know, like he was there was most of the school was, I would say, it was probably 90% white, 95% white people for the most part, you know, in terms of Caucasian, you know, demographics. And he was half, you know, so that was whatever. But, you know, I've been around white people who are racist or prejudiced. Like, racism is to do with power, you know, but there's prejudice. You know, like my grandmother, people who grew up in my grandmother's time, she used to call black people coloreds, like that was, you know, whatever it is. And like I said before in my videos, I might have said this already about, you know, liking shows that were, you know, I watched this show, let me see if I already said that. Okay, so I already talked about that. I talked about this. I said it twice. You're going to hear it's going to be repetitive. I'm just not going to bother to edit out, but I said it already, you know, because whenever the microphone goes dead and I have to recreate something, I don't know what I've said already. And, you know, I could listen to it over again, but that's, you know, I have this stuff fresh in my mind, so I want to say, you know, the last part, you know, which is this part, right? The ending of the video, the ending of this thing I was going to say, which is, you know, whatever level of prejudice I've seen from white people, whatever things that you would say that's racist or negative towards black people, I don't remember ever hearing any of them criticize black people's hair. Like, black people's hair wasn't a topic. And maybe, like I said, it can be woven into our society in one way or another, you know, and black people might feel like that it's there, you know, like whatever, that there's some negativity towards their hair, but that's, you know, who gives a shit? Like, you have to, like with everything, whatever differences you have, whatever physical differences you have, whatever ways people have reacting to, you know, like, you know, people just don't care about other people. They're just not that obsessed with other people. You know, they might have some hatred for some group. You know, some people just hate a group and just are obsessed with it, but that's a very rare type situation. Most people are just focused in on themselves. Like, I'm a person who doesn't like to have attention. Like, I live my life to be invisible when I'm out in public. You know, I try to, you know, I mean, I don't want to call attention to myself. I don't want people thinking about me, looking at me, whatever it is. I don't get anything about people. I don't get anything from people paying attention to me. Like, I'm not an attention-seeking person. Doesn't do anything for me, right? And it's very easy. You know, it's very easy to fade into the background. It's very easy to be invisible in this, you know, whatever it might be, unless you have some kind of thing, you know, that people would look at you. And, you know, if you're a 6'5" guy and you start dressing like a woman, a lot of that is you want people to look at you. You want attention. You want to stand out, right? You know, if you get body piercings, you do these types of things. You want to be different. You want people to look at you. There's a lot of these things are what are called attention-seeking behaviors. But it's very easy just to, you know, fade in the background and be a glue person, like at your job, and, you know, just not be out there. And it's usually better not to have attention of other people because people kind of suck. And, you know, oftentimes it's just attention. It creates, makes your life harder. Like, the more attention you get from other people, the more famous you are, the more people notice you, the more difficult it is. And I think most people who are famous want to be seen. They want people to look at them. But after a while, they're like, yeah, I guess I thought this would be better than it actually is, right? So people don't care about that for the most part. You know, there's some people are concerned about what other people dress, and, you know, you go to church and people are judging. But, you know, this thing she's saying, it's very myopic because, you know, like I said, I don't know of any white people that have ever been concerned about other people's, black people's hair being straightened. I've never seen anybody be like, yeah, I want to make sure they straighten their hair. Like, I don't, you know, I mean, no one's ever said that. Like, I've never heard anybody say that. You know, I remember, like, for example, when I came back from India, I went to this barber, and he was from Philadelphia, and I was living outside of Vegas, right? I eventually found this other barber who was, you know, he was a guy that knew people worked at Trump Tower. I've talked about that guy. that Trump would would screw over the vendors, right? And he was a Republican, and he was already, so I kind of knew that I think he liked Trump, and but even in that, he knew that Trump was kind of a prick to his employees. But the barber I had before that was this Italian guy, and I don't realize how I come across to people or how people see me. But he looked at me and he saw that I was Italian or Sicilian. I'm a quarter Sicilian. He's like, Paisan, I know almost nothing about being Italian. Like, I know most of my shit I know from being Italian comes from movies I watch, right? Like, I don't, I visited my Italian relatives infrequently when I was a kid. They lived in New Jersey. We lived in Connecticut. It was like a 2-hour drive. I'd see them once a year until I was like in my teenage years, and there was some falling out, and I never saw them again. And, the rest of my family, I mean, my grandfather was German, but he didn't speak German. My grandmother was Irish, and she was an orphan. She only spent a small portion of her time in Ireland. And my grandma, who was married to the Sicilian guy, my father's mother, was Albanian, and I couldn't understand a word she said. And I couldn't really understand my grandfather either. And so, he was an Italian barber, even though he's Sicilian, he wasn't like there's a lot of the crime families, mafia, it's associated with being Sicilian. But my grandfather was a barber. He was old, like he was 90 years old when I was a kid. I remember his lying in bed when I walked by, my aunt was wiping his ass. Like these are my memories. I remember he had retired from cutting people's hair, but he didn't. And he was old. His hand shook, and he had a barber's chair in the basement. And my parents were like, get a haircut from your grandfather. And I'm like, I remember I was bleeding by the end of it. He wasn't he didn't. I mean, he was retired, but that didn't keep him from honing his skills on his fucking grandkids. It was like whatever it was. But they were. So this guy goes Paisan, and he's cutting my hair, and he starts calling black people monkeys, right? I'm like, come on, dude, I'm here to get my hair cut, He's an old guy, I must be 40 something, 50. I was probably 50, and he must have been 60. Old guy, 70s, probably in his 70s or whatever. But you hear comments like that, and people will use the N word, whatever it might be. And people say racist things, but I've never heard anything about anybody's hair. And so, in her reality, she's saying that there's this, white movement to straighten black people's hair. That doesn't exist, right? And, it's just a weird thing to say. Okay, ate dinner, went for a walk with my wife. We were talking about the Michelle Obama thing. I think she was the one who sent it to me. And, she talked about how both of us had a positive association with afros, when we were kids. It was my favorite basketball player when I was a kid. One of them was Julius Erving, Dr. J. He had a big afro. But I used to watch this show called Soul Train. There was a show for there was Dick Clark's show called American Bandstand, which is a stupid dance party show. There was an African American show called Soul Train, and the host was this guy named Don Cornelius. And he was way cooler than Dick Clark, right? But I don't have any negative association with the hair that black people have. There's different types of people. Asians have certain types of hair. East Indians have different type of hair. Aboriginal people in Australia, different type of hair. You have these various people in the Nordic area that have blonde hair, all these things. Straight blonde hair, whatever. And then there's redheads, and there's all these other deviations and variations and things. And, with Michelle Obama, and I don't think I said this joke. It's always a problem, like I said, when my microphone goes off and I don't know what I said and where, and I don't really like to re-listen to the videos, and I don't like to redo it because I might forget something. It's all these things. But a lot more people are concerned about Michelle Obama's penis, in terms of white people. There's these things that are shared. My wife sees a lot more of these things. She's not a Republican, but she used to have more Republican views before she became a truther. And she sees things on Reddit and other places Twitter, whoever's in her Twitter feed, whatever social media thing she sees. And she was saying that these people are up in arms about this guy Mandani making all the kids in New York learn Arabic numbers, which is the numbers we already learn, right? But, I see this with Fox News. Mandani, even though the majority of their audience don't have anything to do with New York, and was it New York City, or he's a governor or the mayor, whatever he is, they don't have anything to do with it, don't care about New York, but they're obsessed with this guy Mandani on Fox News because they have their people that they get mad at. And Michelle Obama, the way that she wears her hair isn't nearly as, important as whether she has a dick or not, right? Like, the right-wing people are much more obsessed with her possibly being a dude. And her saying shit like this, like, mansplaining or blacksplaining to white people about black people's hair, this is the kind of thing that they'll share. This is the kind of thing that will get her attention from them, right? So it's just a weird fucking thing. It's not accurate because, her sharing this is being clipped and it's being shared by, the clip that I saw is some right-wing white person that's, that's calling her racist or whatever it is, right? Because this is the kind of thing, and no one gives, and it's just all fucking stupid. Like, it's just the amount of bullshit that people say. Well, speaking of this is this guy. This guy, Rabbi Shmuley, is one of the most unlikable people. And he was the guy that RFK Jr. licked his taint when, he made the mistake of saying that Ashkenazi Jewish people were genetically not predisposed to getting COVID. That they were one of the groups that didn't get COVID. And the people just hammered him in the Congress when he was supposed to be talking about censorship. And to redeem himself, he went on an interview with this guy and licked this guy's taint and Israel's taint the whole 2 hours. It was sickening.
You have done everything in your power to prove to me that you do not exist, to make me into an atheist, or that even if you don't exist, that you're cruel, that you're wicked, that you're unloving, that you're vengeful. But I want you to know that I will die the way I was born, a believing Jew.
So he's saying that's what God has done to him. That God is a vengeful God, a prick. And let's listen. So this is what he's saying about God.
You have done everything in your power to prove to me that you do not exist.
I mean, this is what he's talking. He's a rabbi. His daughter sells kosher dildos and sex toys, right? Like, he's a real freak and just annoying, just an absolute piece of shit. But
to make me into an atheist, or that even if you don't exist, that you're cruel, that you're wicked, that you're unloving, that you're vengeful. But I want you to know that I will die the way I was born, a believing Jew. That there is no power in the universe, including you, God, creator of heaven and earth, he who fills the infinite expanse of space. I, as a Jew, am stronger than you.
He's stronger than God. Because whatever, you think God's trying to make you into an atheist? Like, in the self-importance of people. You think God is specifically focused on you? I mean, you have divinity within you, and God is there for you anytime you want God. But that's 100% up to you. And there are these higher developed beings that are orchestrating everything. And so you think God's trying to make you into an atheist? That he's trying to convince you he doesn't exist? What the fuck are you talking about? That you're more powerful than him because he's trying to... Maybe he wants to get rid of you. Like, maybe he's like, stop using my name. Stop talking about me. You have, like, bro. Like, this thing isn't working out, right? Maybe you want to consider atheism for the good of everybody, right? I've said this about some Christians. I'm like, you think Jesus is happy with your behavior? Just pushing people away from Christ. There's so many Christians that you see, not so many, but there's, the ones I'm talking about, that just every time they open their mouth, they push people away from Christ. They're not cool. They're not, people don't identify with them. And they wreck the religion. And they think they're like, they're right with Christ because they're always using Christ's name. But they're doing damage to Christianity. And they're pushing Christians away. And it's like, And this guy's doing the same thing to Judaism. So this is this guy's longer video here. He says all that stuff in the beginning, this stuff here. I mean, the arrogance of the guy, and the attention seeking.
When I was a child, I was given payas, I was taught the Shema, and I was taught to believe in you as God. Now, for the past 2 years in the ghetto, you have done everything in your power to prove to me that you do not exist.
Okay, so what the fuck are you talking about? Like, he's done everything in his power to show that he doesn't exist because things haven't gone the way that you like. That's the arrogance of that interpretation, that's what God's trying to do. Why would God want to prove that he doesn't exist?
To make me into an atheist, or that even if you don't exist, that you're cruel, that you're wicked, that you're unloving, that you're vengeful. But
that's the God you guys believe in because it's in the Old Testament. Like, that's exactly the description of God in the Old Testament, right, in the Jewish Bible.
I want you to know that I will die the way I was born, a believing Jew. That there is no power in the universe, including you, God, creator of heaven and earth, he who fills the infinite expanse of space. I, as a Jew, am stronger than you. My name is Israel, he who wrestles with God and is victorious.
You're wrestling with God, and you're going to... Because God's trying to convince you he doesn't exist? That's what you think God's all about, right? The fuck?
I will die with my faith intact. There is nothing you can do. No Hitlers, no Gestapo, no SS that can be sent against me that will ever... And no Hamas. And no Hamas.
And no Hamas. Don't forget of Hamas. That, was an Israeli asset. Like, I mean, it's just so performative. God's not out to get you. Like, that's, whatever you get is what you deserve, right? Whatever each person get is what they deserve. Like, some people everyone has different lives, and everyone has different internal worlds in the way that they process and they accept things. And you have people who are very entitled, right? Who, even the slightest things, they have good lives, and they're not grateful for shit, right? They're entitled brats, and then there's other people who have horrific lives, and they have nothing but faith and love for God, right? But this prick...
that will ever cause me to question my faith in you. From the time...
Okay, so, the self-importance here. Anyways, so this is what it's going to look like. Donald Trump is the most innocent, also is the very smart. Is also very smart. So one of my viewers left a comment. Well, there's two comments. One person said, shekel for your thoughts, Paul, which is, I've been getting a lot. And then there's another shekel one I saw yesterday, but I didn't. There's another, there's a lot. It's the shekel thing's catching on, is what I'm saying. Somebody else wrote that Trump going off on that reporter was because she asked about Khashoggi murder to the Saudi prince. But, which kind of makes it worse because, and I think the Epstein thing was, obviously, she asked that question and then to ask the Epstein thing, right? There was this Saudi prince might have murdered a dude or whatever, or did, and, whatever the thing is. But, Trump doesn't have a sense of things anymore. Like, that's a Joe Biden moment. If he was triggered by the first question, then the second question came in. And then he's threatening to take away ABC's license because she's asking those questions, which are both legitimate fucking questions. You got a guy who's coming to the White House that murdered a reporter that's connected to an American publication that was a national news story, like I heard that story before. And that question's always going to come up. Why would it not come up, right? You'd be a bad reporter for not doing it. And he said, not the question, it's the tone. And then asking about the Epstein files, which is now, they're not haven't released them at all. Today's Friday, November 21st, so tomorrow this video will be up somewhere around noon. 1 o'clock, whatever it is. And then the next day, my video will be up at 9 o'clock, and then I'll skip a day. Which will be, I don't know, what's today? So this will be Saturday, and then Sunday will be a nighttime video, and then Monday will be a day without a video. So that's how it goes now. That's how it's working. It's actually working better for me. It's slightly less stress. It's not that it's that stressful. But, this thing with Trump, it's bad. Like, he looks, anybody who's not a dumbass Trumper who gets all their bullshit news from Fox News. And, what can you say about people who watch CNN, MS Now, which, that, even then you can see the Trump influence that NBC News is trying to divorce itself from MSNBC because they have opinions over there. Their opinions suck, but now, of course, their opinions are a lot better because Trump is everything that they wanted him to be, right? But anybody watching CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, and any of these other, smaller, whatever they are, and believe their bullshit, what value do you have as a person? Being aware of the news isn't that important. But we're talking about consciousness level. Like, if you don't know Fox News sucks by now, if you don't know CNN sucks by now, like, it's just, there's no reason to get your news from them, right? And then if you go to these shill pieces of shit that are on, that do podcasts kind of stuff, this kind of thing, who are Trump shills, and, any of these people, and you're buying into it. Like, people will say, Candace Owens a shill, or Tucker Carlson, if I cover them. And, like, you don't even need to say that, right? And, almost everybody has an agenda, whatever it might be. And so, let's move on to the next thing here. Mice exposed to UV light only get skin cancer when fed seed oils. Mice fed saturated fat do not get skin cancer. I have no idea if this is true. This is just somebody sent me this thing. I got one message on Instagram today. I usually get like 10. I was like, there's only one. But the person sent me this. Like I said, I don't know if this is true or not, but my wife and I got rid of seed oils, a couple of years ago. Occasionally, I guess, if we go out to eat and we don't know what they're using. But we don't eat fried foods and things like that anyway. But there's canola oil in almost everything. And it could be organic canola oil. It doesn't matter because it's, it's like it was originally intended to be some kind of it was like a Rockefeller thing that was made to, again, I just, kind of know about it. But it doesn't matter what it's not just the seed oil. It's when it's deep fried and then, it's brought up to a certain level of temperature and it's just artery clogging shit, and it has all kinds of negative things going on with it. Okay, so then one of my viewers said that Amy Schumer went on Ozempic, right? So Amy Schumer, who I call Sad Dumplin, and I'll show you why. For those of you who are kind of new to my channel. When I covered more celebrity stuff. But she was somebody who, did really bad abortion jokes, right? Really fucking horrible abortion jokes. She's not funny. She was on Last Comic Standing. That there was like a reality show, which was an amazing show that they just, the first season was good, but it got shitty ratings. Because comedians having a, I don't know where that came from. Comedians are just funny. They're very interesting people because they're not usually, in terms of a reality TV situation, they're usually very neurotic and, there are a lot of things. There's a lot, there's lots of people that are funny that, there's funny people. Being funny is, there's probably 2 out of 10 people are funny or just whatever. Everybody can be a little bit funny, but some people are just naturally, have comedic type of talent. But there's a certain kind of personality that needs to do stand-up. And, I do comedy here. But I don't, when I say things that it has to be something that I find funny. It has to make me feel, if I'm not laughing, there's that feeling you have inside when you're laughing, right? It's a good feeling. that's feeling inside when that you're like a laughter feeling. It's I don't know. It's a different feeling than it's happiness, but the feeling of laughter and laughing is standalone feeling, and I have to feel that feeling when I'm making jokes. Like it has to be funny to me, and then that transfers to other people. Like they pick up on the feeling, but comedians usually don't have that feeling. Like they're not laughing at they're it's the thing they're doing with the audience, and there's just something with comedians that need that whatever it is to be in front of people and that whole thing. But she wasn't really a good one. She sucked. She was obviously on Last Comic Standing. She was young because they picked her. They have all these old comedians that try to work their way up through the comedy ranks, and she was just like this young girl, and they put her on the show. And then I knew when they made her famous that it was intentional, because I knew she sucked on that show. And of course she was stealing jokes, and she's not really funny. And so, and then obnoxious stuff. She tried to be edgy, and she's kind of stupid. But then she got pregnant, and this thing, right? So that's not a real person. Apparently she put these pictures up on Instagram and then wiped her. Like that is not a real person. Like that is, we don't know what she really looks like and whether she's lost this weight, but if she did, it's going to be ghoulish, right? There's going to be like those arms are not, this is completely AI generated, right? But she had the worst time in her pregnancies. She had these, she couldn't get pregnant. I think she tried to have a couple kids. Her husband's autistic, and she kind of slams him in her comedy because she's just like a piece of shit like that. And she couldn't get pregnant like properly, and her pregnancies were hell. And she was talking about this baby inside, how precious it was, and I'm like, yeah, she was this liberal abortion joke shit that she did, right? So she's just one of the worst, people who are. This is what I always say about these people who push abortions. It's a baby when you think it's a baby, but when you don't want it, what is it, right? Women who get pregnant and like, oh look, I'm pregnant. Here's a picture of the ultrasound. It's so wonderful. There's a baby inside me. But then when it isn't, when you get an abortion, what is it, right? Again, I'm not the whole abortion thing is more complex than people think. But it's a life. It's a human life. It's, once you're pregnant, life begins at conception. And everyone deep down knows it. So, what you're doing is just killing fetuses, which is, killing a human being. Like a human being, your life starts at conception and it ends when you die, right? So you have a life. That's your life. Your life doesn't begin when you're born. It doesn't begin in the third trimester. It doesn't begin in the second trimester. It begins at conception. It's, it's the easiest thing to figure out scientifically and spiritually. Again, like when you have a miscarriage, you get depressed. My ex had a couple of miscarriages, right? We had 4 kids and 2 miscarriages. And, we had a relationship with the baby to be born. It was depressing for me. Like I went through stuff. It's there. And so one of my ex-girlfriends got an abortion after we broke up, and I found out about it, and I had a reaction to it. Like, an unexplained reaction. You know what I mean? Where I should have been relieved, and it would have been a disaster if this is a horrible person. But, it's a thing. It's just a thing. But people who push it, and then they have trouble getting pregnant, and they're like, she did. And then their story completely changes, right? And then they don't come out and say, yeah, I was kind of wrong about this. So she's just a certain type of ghoul. But who would put a picture like this out? She apparently wiped her Instagram. This is her.
Be honest, and like when I tried Ozempic like 3 years ago, and it made me so sick. And I just don't want my friends who are teachers and nurses.
So apparently she tried it again, or she's got another one of those things. So let me show you the sad dumpling thing here. So Amy Schumer went to this protest with another famous celebrity, and the cop was like, arrest or no arrest, as they walked through. She goes, arrest. They were arresting people. She wanted to be arrested. I forget what they were protesting. It might have been a Supreme Court judge getting passed through. It doesn't matter. It was the weakest, gayest protest of all time. Totally fake, totally staged. And she did this to the camera, and I went, "Oh, sad dumpling." So I started calling her Sad Dumpling from this picture. And now she's sad, deflated AI dumpling, right? It was better when you were this sad, whatever was going on with her. But she's just, doing these fake Hollywood protests, just staged, and making sure there are a lot of cameras, and where the cop was like, "Do you want to get arrested or not?" "Oh, yes, put me down for an arrest." I mean, just the weakest thing ever. Yeah, so this was Amy Schumer and Emily Ratajkowski arrested at the Kavanaugh hearing. So this is about Kavanaugh, when people gave a shit about that, the liberals did.
Hi, Zola. I'm here with your mom. She loves you very much. I think we're going to get arrested.
I think we can get arrested. It's going to be fun. It's going to be so cool. We're going to get arrested. I'm going to get arrested over Kavanaugh. I'm going to get arrested.
And we're so proud of you.
She asked her. She asked her if she wanted to get arrested here. Watch. Yeah, but yes. Yeah, I'll take an arrest. Put me down for one arrest. Yeah. So they had a line to get arrested, a line not to. I mean, just wasting resources and the whole bullshit thing. Exit. If you don't want to get arrested, these are for the people who want to get arrested. Like this sad dumpling over here. So this is the best moment here. Here's when she does it. Boom! Puts her hand up and looks at the thing. It's her sad dumpling moment here. Boom! Yeah, me. Look at me and my fatigues. Put her hands up. Okay, so sad dumpling. So these protests, which I always talk about, don't work, and all these things. There's another one here. We believe survivors. Do you? And then they just discounted the whole Epstein thing. Remember? The fucking, just the posing is just off the charts. I mean, it's just the posing has just got to go. Okay, statement from Senator Fetterman's spokesman. During an early morning walk, Senator Fetterman sustained a fall near his home in Braddock. Out of an abundance of caution, he was transported to a hospital in Pittsburgh. Upon evaluation, it was established that he had a ventricular fibrillation flare-up that led to Senator Fetterman feeling lightheaded, falling to the ground and hitting his face with minor injuries. Senator Fetterman had this to say: "If you thought my face looked bad before, wait until you see it now." He's doing well and receiving routine observations at the hospital. He has opted to stay so doctors can fine-tune his medication regime. Holy shit. Senator Fetterman is grateful for EMTs, doctors, and nurses who are providing care. And so Fetterman is just the poster child for everything that's great or funny about the system. The system of shitty, government. Because, so look at him now. He's he's totally gooling it up, right? So before he had his stroke, he was just a fucking goof. I had a thing where I used to do Fetterman Smash. Some of you guys might remember that. Fetterman Smash, Fetterman Hungry. He's got this witch of a wife who looks like she's some gypsy witch here. And, he was this is when he had his porn stash. And, he refuses to wear a suit, but that's just icing on the cake. But then, he was bad before, and he was involved in the whole election fraud thing with Trump. Trump and Biden. And then he runs for Senate. They handpick him. And he has a stroke. And he comes back and he's totally fucked. He was bad before. But he starts his debate with, "Good night, everybody," right? And it's the worst debate performance. The guy who clearly, he's got this thing going on back here. And he's, a disaster. And Biden's team goes, I don't think he's lost any support. He still was beating Dr. Oz after showing he was mentally incompetent. And then he goes, immediately he wins, and he gets sworn in, and he immediately has an episode, gets depressed, and gets checked into a psych ward. And another senator goes to visit him to see if he's okay. And he says the guy's catatonic, and he's just making figure eight signs with his hand in the air. He's like fucking, he can't, like he's just gone, right? And then it takes him 3 months. He's suicidal. They roll him out, and now he has this inability to understand people talking. They all sound like the Peanuts adults. And he needs a tablet to interpret. He needs a tablet to tell him what people are saying. And then he can't articulate shit either. He can't communicate, and that's his job. And then he refuses to wear a suit. And so this big fucking brain dead piece of shit that's senator for 6 years. It's everything that I love about like how bad the government is. There is this, whatever it might be there. And then he comes out and he slams the liberals on Israel. And he just come up and they confront him on park benches, and he's just oblivious because he can't understand what they're saying. And he's just such an Israeli shill. And so that's just wonderful. Like he's, mentally incompetent. He can't do anything. You wouldn't let him, like I used to say about Joe Biden, would you let him drive your kid's school bus? Then why are you going to give him the nuclear codes? And I would even say it more for Fetterman. What job could Fetterman do? He couldn't be a garbage man. He couldn't be a janitor. He couldn't be he couldn't do any sort of physical labor. I mean, we can't put him in any mental position. He couldn't be an air traffic controller. And yet he's senator for 6 years. And who knows if these dopes will reelect him because they won't be a better candidate when his time runs out. And so, unfettered. And so, and now he's fallen and hit his fucking face just like Hillary Clinton did so many times. Because he's got multiple health issues. Like what kind of medications is he on? And what exactly am I guilty of? So he's just like glorious. Like he is, everything that I talk about in terms of politics and the show and just how being contrived. There's no way this guy should do any kind of job. This guy should be institutionalized. And now he's got heart issues on top of everything else. The title of this video is, Did Charlie Kirk Save My Life? And you know how he did that? By getting shot, right? This is kind of great here.
Because the Tyler Robinson story wasn't making any sense. Well, I want to tell you guys this. There's another phone call that I had with Andrew Colvett where...
This one of these, he puts the gay in TPUSGAY.
I was crying on the phone with him. I mean, I am talking maybe 72 hours max after Charlie was killed. And he was also upset on the phone. But he said something, and it's hitting differently the more that I think about it. He said, and I quote, "Candace, it was supposed to be you. It was supposed to be you." Now, at the time, I dismissed this as some sort of bargaining, right? That's an actual stage of grief. You do bargain. You wish that it was this person. You could trade it. Maybe you wish that it was yourself. And to be honest...
Well, it's a weird thing to say to you, right? Like that's saying to your kid, like you have one kid who dies and you said, yeah, you should have been the one that died, right? Like that happens where there's somebody loses a child and the parents say, I wish it had been you, right? Like that's the thing that's in movies, right? She said Andrew Colvett had said to her that her and Tucker, should be killed, or they should be they are on a list, whatever. He said that they're not safe, and she was wondering, whether this is true or not. And I would assume she tapes all her phone calls because she seems to do shit like that. But if he said these two things that Tucker, after Charlie was killed, that Tucker and her, they're at threat, they're at risk, which they'd have to come from Israel. Like people, I've got a few comments where people are like bummed that I think maybe me personally or people are still making something of this story. But this story is significant for a couple of reasons. The biggest reason is that there's a chance it'll come out that Israel killed him. At least, the mainstream media is not going to cover that, but they might be 20% of the population or more will believe that Charlie Kirk was killed by Israel, right? Charlie Shekels. And, as much of a piece of shit he is, he's an American citizen. And if you believe that Israel murdered him, which is the most logical story, in terms of, there are people who believe it's a hologram, which could be true. There's people who believe he's not really dead, whatever. Whatever his marriage is fake, there's all these things. People have their different opinions about, when a story is so full of lies, then these counter narratives come in. And, all those things are possibilities. But the one that sticks is that Israel is the most likely suspect. And if it ever comes out in any real way and you have lots of people believing Israel kills an American citizen, that then all this other bullshit, that'll change everything. Especially, it would ruin Israel with the Republican Party, and they're already fucked with the Democrats. And so there could be this significant change, whether it's staged, whether it's meant to happen. But that's what this is about, like the shekel part. That Israel is, and whatever this stuff happens with her, whatever's going on with her and her story, any of the number of things, whatever her reasoning and whatever her involvement, whatever her connections, whatever her role is, whatever, whoever she works for, whatever the thing is, like who are her handlers. There's all these people out there that are obsessed with this story, right? This is their 9/11. This is their Pizzagate. Young people, people just want to get to the bottom of this. And it's already done significant damage to the Israeli-American relationship, like all the stuff that's come out. And for the future. And so, that's a big deal. Like it's, again, there's no saving the system. But truth coming out in any capacity is positive. Like there's an effect that happens when people realize the truth, whether they can control the government, these things, what I call the controllers. There's still something that happens. It's like the truth coming out is always a good thing. There's change. It changes people's consciousness, and then it eventually changes what I call the show and everything else. It'll have an effect on it. Not the kind of effect that people want, but it'll still have an effect. Whenever you bring divinity, like one of the things you do as a spiritual person, person has an internal connection to God, is you witness things and you send information back to the divine source, right? Because like God, doesn't have ears, right? God doesn't have a mind. And so, there's a divine beings running the planet, but there's this idea of witnessing that, when you experience things on planet Earth, it's different than if you're an etheric being, who's observing whatever's going on in planet Earth. And there's a different level of understanding when you're in the shit, right? When it's like watching a movie and being emotionally affected by what you're seeing, or watching news and seeing kids being bombed, or actually being there and smelling the smells and hearing the cries and being there physically, right? Like if you're in a war zone physically, it's much more traumatic than watching on TV. It might affect you through the TV, but it's certainly in the divine realm when you don't have a physical body. It's like you're in the video game, and it's a lot, different. But anyways, there's a possible, there's usually it's a disappointment. Most of these stories just die after a while. But, it's something to build on, right, in the future.
I did go through that phase of bargaining with Charlie. Like, why didn't it happen to somebody else? This is a good person who had his whole life ahead of him.
He's not a good person. He took shekels to promote a genocide. Like, he's a horrible fucking person, right? And you could say he wasn't, like whatever his rationalization. He took fucking shekels to go to college students and promote censorship and promote, even though he was all about free speech, at his rallies. These kids were being censored. You know, he pushed Trump, who's a piece of shit. I mean, all this stuff. And he was like, yeah, the stuff he did with Palestinians alone. But there's lots of bad shit Charlie was for. He was Charlie Shekels, right? There's nothing here. Like, he's not a good person. And even, like, just as a personality, he's kind of a dick, right? Like, he wasn't, like, some great person, some great guy. You know, he was kind of an asshole.
I told you that even my father went through that stage of grief. My father was like, this makes me feel terrible because Charlie has lived his life so admirably, and, like, I've had so many chances in life, so many illnesses, and it just makes me so sad. But now I'm feeling a little bit different, removed from the situation. Like, now I'm going, was I being, I don't know, was he being honest? Was Andrew being honest? Was Andrew trying to maybe communicate to me after, especially given the fact that I told you that while the actual day on September 10th, while Charlie was in the hospital, he told me that there was a list and that me and Tucker Carlson were on it and that we had to lay low, but he never told me who told him that. I never got a call from...
Where was the list from, and who was the people that were going to execute the list? You know, again, is this true or not? If it's true, I mean, this is this guy from TPUSGay who has information that Charlie's been shot and say, yeah, you and Tucker Carlson better lay low because you guys are on the list. And it wouldn't be the same killing Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson. You know, they have more, they have more fans. They have more viewers. You know, Tucker Carlson maybe be a little bit more significant. But they wouldn't be the same outcry or the same outrage that they had with Charlie Kirk. Like Charlie Kirk, they had created this TPUSGay stuff and the Christian right and all this stuff. He was, you know, the whole thing that he did. It had to be him. Like, it just wouldn't be nearly the distraction. You know, it would not nearly be the outcry, right? Because of his brand. I mean, to be totally different. Like, I didn't even know who he was, and I knew who Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens were. But I can see right now, you know, after, in retrospect, that to have a distraction the way it is, and to have, like, you know, his ties to Israel, which were, I mean, just significant, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars, you know, like all of that.
From the feds telling me that. So I feel like these questions I have now are quite valid. Andrew, by the way, was not the only person who called me on that day and reached out to my family on that day with this warning, immediately cautioning me and Tucker to keep our mouths shut, telling us that we should lay low because there was a quote-unquote list going around.
There's a list, and you're on it.
Other person
was checking it twice, and you've been naughty.
A very well-known woman who happens to be married to a CIA contractor. Same exact message. You and Tucker Carlson. But, of course, we cannot tell you who we are getting this information from. I'm starting to realize, as I consider who the sources are and their closeness to the military, and now that we've gotten into the story and realized that virtually everybody there that day has these military ties, that threat may have been coming from the government, actually. That the globalized government that we live under, right? LOL to the idea that we have...
Or there's no threat at all. They just want you to be quiet. You know, so whatever. But this story still has legs. And, you know, there was just when things aren't resolved and they're done in such a shitty way, and this is tied to the Epstein thing, like, these are significant things that are happening. You know, the truth, we live in a time where truth is leaking through the illusion, right? It's like it's like the dam that's holding back the truth is starting to crack and water is seeping out all over the place. And when, you know, eventually when the truth comes out, the system dies. Like, that's, you know, if truth will kill this system. I mean, that's the problem. Like, that's the trade-off. You have a desire to seek the truth, but seeking the truth, and the more people that are seeking the truth, and again, even with all the disinformation, you just need the negative truth to come out about what the system is. You know, most people just can't stand it or can't handle it. You know, they don't want it. But, you know, when it's right in their fucking faces, and then people freak the fuck out and the system collapses. Like, this is a confidence game. You know, it's a grift. We have a grifting economy and a grifting religion, and we have a grifting, you know, social system, and everything's a grift. And, you know, it's an illusion that when the illusion crumbles, the system crumbles, because it's our willingness to deny the truth and live under a system that's bad for us and be, you know, just take our little addictions. Like everyone's got their things that are, you know, that they think they need, and, you know, they've been conditioned to think that you need to have, that the system provides. And so everyone's scared. You know, it's like when you see homeless people, it's like a warning, like this could be you, right? Like you could this could be you sleeping in a cardboard box, you know, an entrepreneur. And so, you know, it's call homeless people entrepreneurs, because, you know, there's a certain freedom in it, right? Those are the real free people that don't have any overhead or whatever, you know. You know, they used to, you know, whatever the thing is. But you see people who are desperate, and you're like, hey, that could be me. Like some part of you like rolls up the window, and you're driving through an area, like, you know, but it's a warning. Like it's just your lifestyle isn't guaranteed. Like everyone deep down knows it. Anyways, you know, so there's that. Okay, so I want to get to something with Morning Joe here. This is Elizabeth Simons, one of the billionaires who helped fund Mom Donnie. Before you ask, yes, she is. That's implying that she's Jewish, right? And so, you know, Amy Schumer's uncle is Chuck Schumer. And we just saw Charlie Kirk, Fetterman with his menorah. You know, this stuff is all over the place, right? You know, the influence that you see here. Like Amy Schumer's just manufactured. Like she didn't organically become a top comedian. And remember, she had that leather special that was so bad on Netflix, it got so many bad ratings. And everyone said, well, she's being, you know, bombarded by the insults, you know, like all these angry men or whatever. So Netflix had to change their whole rating system. It was so bad, and then she kind of disappeared for a while. But, you know, Pauly Shore, his mom was Mitzi Shore, and she owned the Comedy Store and was very influential in the world of stand-up comedians. That's why Pauly Shore, who was totally untalented, unbelievably annoying. You know, there's a video out there where I don't know if he insults some guy's wife, but the guy walks up on stage and like punches him, right? And Pauly's like, come on, dude. But, you know, like you have this thing where they manufacture people and put them up there. You know, some of them have talent, some of them don't. But they are put up there for a reason, right? And so Mondami, you know, he's like the big villain right now over Fox News. And people, like I said, don't give a shit about New York, don't care about any of these things. You know, they're not involved in New York. They're living out some rural right-wing country place far away from New York State and New York City. But they're worried about socialism and this guy, Mondami. But something happened. Now, let me go to this other clip here. Okay, so I don't know where he is, some place where guys wear cowboy hats. It's totally fake. You know, everything's so staged. Pauly Shore's so desperate for some attention.
What else have been talking to? Well, you know what? That's fucking how it is. Sometimes people gotta shut the fuck up.
They're saying to hit him. That's totally fake. You can see right here. This guy's punch is like the lamest punch ever. Like he's just waiting for him to punch him. And like he dives down before the fucking thing even hits him. Total fucking stage piece of shit. And he just hits the thing. Totally fake. I mean, and then why is this cop just coming up here now? Why is there a cop even there at the Comedy Store? And it's not even secure. There's a cop there. And they come up and grab the guy. And like, you know, just so fucking fake. And that's how desperate Pauly Shore is for attention, whatever this was. In Odessa, Texas, by some guy in a cowboy hat. You know, so. Everything about Pauly Shore is like a stage and fake, and just, you know, nothing's organic. So I went to eat breakfast. It was kind of late. I forgot to make my kasha, the grain. I probably have kasha and eggs every morning. And fucking, I went and watched ESPN, but it was just like bogus shit I didn't care about. So I went to YouTube TV where I record Morning Joe because I want to see if anything big happened. You know, anything I might add to the video. And of course, since I'm talking about it, there was. And so here it is.
I think what they did was despicable. I don't agree with the president. They should be put in jail. But I do believe what they did was despicable. They need to explain themselves.
Did you go too far? Saying punishable by
I think they went too far. Well, yeah, I think that's over the top. But the point you're missing here is you had 6 members of Congress openly encourage members of the military to disobey orders of this president without giving an example of order that is illegal. I think they're despicable.
Okay, so first of all, what's going on with this dude's hair, right? This is the guy's the biggest shill for Israel and Trump's biggest taint licker. And he's criticizing these Democrats for apparently telling troops deployed by Trump or whatever, and I'll find more about this in a second, not to disobey, to not do anything illegal, to not obey orders from Trump if they're illegal. And so, which I'll get to in a moment. But this guy who's the biggest shill ever for Trump says Trump went too far, right? Like, that's how bad this is. When he calls for these senators, these these Democrats, these 6 congressional Democrats, to be hung, right?
But he also endorsed a call to hang them, the members of Congress. I mean, what do you make of that? Is that too far?
Okay, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham offering a little bit of pushback to President Trump's suggestion that some Democrats should be executed after accusing them of sedition.
For telling them not to commit illegal acts.
Yeah.
Think about this. The president is suggesting that members of Congress should be hung because they're just telling American troops, don't commit illegal acts.
You can see here Mika's cup. It says MS Now on it. You can't see that maybe, but above it, it has a pair of like lipstick on it, like a painting of a lipstick. Must be their Morning Joe cup. But it's on the side, like she just kissed the mug. It's fucking creepy. They're pushing this MS Now thing, which is kind of hilarious. Let's go to the fact-checking on this thing. Not fact-checking, but let's get the story here. So Trump says seditious behavior punishable by death.
President Donald Trump is accusing half a dozen Democratic lawmakers of sedition, quote, punishable by death, after the lawmakers called on U.S. military members to uphold the Constitution and defy, quote, illegal orders. The 90-second video was first posted early Tuesday from Senator Alyssa Slotkin's X account. It features 6 lawmakers, all veterans of the armed services and intelligence community. In the video, they speak directly to U.S. service members.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Trump on Thursday reposted messages.
This is really bad and dangerous to our country. The words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors. Lock them up? ? President Donald J. Trump, DJT. All right, so first of all, when you're in the Army and you're in the military, you can have a president that orders you to do illegal shit, and he dies or is gone, and then you're on the hook for it. Like you're a young person, young military people that are being asked to do shit that will come back to haunt you. Like you'll be responsible for that. I was talking to my brother about this, about martial law, and I said, it'll come down to whether American troops will fire on American citizens. Like when shit goes south and American citizens are going crazy and, are like riots and whatever else is going on. Like everything falls apart, like much worse than anything we've seen. And then they have to roll out the troops for reals, like not this bullshit thing Trump's doing. And I was saying, it'll just come down to whether, this is even pre-trial. I don't know when, this was maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I don't know what I was talking about. But, I was saying, there's going to be martial law, whatever it is. My brother's a old school truther, but he's kind of, his stuff is dated. He's not up with the times or whatever. And he said, well, I know what'll happen because, when he came back from Vietnam, he was like a drill sergeant. And he was ordered to go to Pennsylvania, some hippie rally. He had like a truck full of, armed troops, and he was supposed to go there. So this is, martial law in the 60s, right? And he said, we ain't fuck that. So he disobeyed the order. And he went and he parked his truck on the side of the road, and he sent one of the privates, one of the people in to go get some beers. And he just sat there in the truck drinking beers. And because he said, you go to these things, like my brother was smart enough to realize after Vietnam that they were, he was guarding poppy fields and shit like that. That it was a setup. Like if they go in there and they end up firing on some fucking hippies, something goes south and one of his guys kills a hippie, they'll be fucked, locked up, and, blamed. They're being set up for failure, right? And so I don't mind the video because obviously Trump is unhinged and he's losing his shit, right? And so for him to say these things here.
Just from others about the video, amplifying it with his own words. Democrats accused him of acting like a king and trying to...
Okay, so I guess people are saying they should be hung and Trump reposted or something. And, what doesn't matter. He's calling it treason. And, I'm sure some of his dopey Republican people will fucking his morons that watch Fox News. And Fox News will go after the Democrats. But in reality, Trump is completely unhinged. And he's losing his shit, right? He's saying he's going to threaten ABC's license because of the questions he doesn't like. He's acting like a fucking pouty little king, right? And he's completely owned by Israel. I mean, he's just been played. Like he's just, he's been exposed. Several churches are now adopting AI-powered chatbots that let members interact with AI versions of Jesus, encourage them to confess their sins, asking spiritual questions, and seeking for help for personal issues. The AI, please tell me this is satire. No, this is actually real and quite concerning. AI-powered Jesus chatbots. We'll see what happens here. A new Jesuit awakening fully with some churches where PSs have. This is Axios. AI arrives at church. Now chatbots are shaking up releases. Meet chatbot Jesus, how churches use AI to save souls. So, that's where we're at with all that bullshit. Trump's spiritual advisor and mega church founder, Pastor Robert Morris, was sentenced to only 6 months in jail for sexually abusing a 12-year-old. Trump sure does a lot of pedophiles that always seem to get light sentences. So this is the woman who's, I guess, his mom of the kid who was affected. There he is getting fucking marched out.
I'm just happy that it is over. I feel good about it. It's behind us. What does this feel like? I don't know that I have words for that yet.
Okay, so a lot of these pastors end up being pedos, which, so of course the priests even more commonly. So here.
One of the largest congregations in America. Today, walking into an Oklahoma courthouse, pleading guilty to sexually abusing an underage girl.
This has taken my entire lifetime to get here.
That girl was Cindy Clemishire, now 55. Inside the courtroom, delivering a message to her abuser.
Oh my God, I thought it was the mom. So it took years.
Tears, as Gateway Church founder.
All right, so Robert Morris, a former Trump campaign spiritual advisor, pleads guilty to child sex abuse. He's only getting 6 months in jail. I mean, it was 12-year-old and continued until the age of 16. And so he's given a 10-year suspended sentence, but was ordered to serve 6 months in Oklahoma County Jail in order to pay $250,000 in restitution. So that's a bullshit fucking thing. But I was looking at after I got done with the first thing I showed you. What difference does it matter? Look at this guy's fucking hair. I mean, what difference does it fucking matter, right? What difference does it make? Do you know what I mean? We've gotten to the point where everything's so fucked And we don't have a response as people. Like, we don't have any leverage. We don't have any, there's not, like, protests don't work. And, the democracy is a fucking sham. And, we don't have anything, people don't have anything they can do. But post shit on the internet and say, oh, this is really shitty. Yeah, that is really shitty. Whoa, this is bad, Like, it's just fucking, it's like learned helplessness, right? Which is, again, to the crib thing. I got to remember to do that. I'm almost done with this video, then I'll do the voiceover. But, like, you have this, what's the point? Like, you report these things. Like, what if this guy is another pedo that's involved with fucking the church and involved with Trump? And, like, he's getting no fucking real consequences or punishment. I mean, 6 months in jail sucks, but it's not fucking, he sexually abused a 12-year-old girl. And then $250,000, like, is he even going to pay it, right? So, and Trump, Trump will just disavow this guy. And we know, like, it's just fucked. Like, the people at the top are depraved, and the people at the bottom are sheep, and everyone else in between is, is helpless to do anything about it, right? That's why we always say only spirituality will save this world, is because it's, we have no recourse to the material world. Like, just to watch the free fucking fall and watch our system collapse from its own depravity. So I think TikTok is no longer allowing for translations of Israeli videos, right? And I'm a little bit vague on how I know that. Maybe somebody said in a comment, maybe somebody told me. So this is Christians in the Holy Land. Israel's Jesus is the bastard, yay, yay. They openly mock Jesus on Israeli TV. They spit on Christians in the Holy Land. They kill Christians, blow up churches. They spread anti-Christian propaganda. No! So they're hammering this puppet's arms onto a cross like Christ. Punch him in the face with a fucking hammer. Christians tell you that mother of Jesus was a virgin, Mary. But this is not true. The proof is simple. When John the Baptist used to surprise her with 2 fingers in the hips, Mary wouldn't jump. Besides, if Mary really was a virgin, then why would she show then why wouldn't show sex toys? Well, what? If Mary really was a virgin, then she wouldn't show sex toys? Don't believe the Christian church.
Jesus is a bastard. Whoa, 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 whoa. Jesus is a bastard. Yeah, 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 yeah. Perhaps you should just be finding a new wife, Joseph. No, I love Mary, so she's the apple of my eye. But now another man has been between the thighs.
Oh!
You and your fucking Jesus could kiss my ass, okay? We killed Jesus, we're proud of it.
We're proud of it.
All that Christians hold sacred and holy, Israeli Jews, whom American
I used to see this guy on Facebook, and then he disappeared.
taxpayers support, spit on, trash, and defile.
Boom. All right, so there's that. So this is a second video. I don't know if I showed the first one. Somebody sent me another one. This guy's a gay dude who does a great job of mouthing Trump's words. And, here it is.
But Arnold Palmer was all man. And I say that in all due respect to women, and I love women. But this guy, this is a guy that was all man. His man was strong and tough. And I refuse to say it, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, oh my God, that's unbelievable. I had to say it.
Holy shit. I mean, it's a weird thing for Trump to say, talking about Arnold Palmer's cock. Like, what the fuck? Like, what's it? Check, please. Like, it's fucking, what's happening, right? And I remember that quote. This makes it even worse. Just bad. X has disabled translations of Hebrew posts. Just let that sink in. This means they know that Israel's society is evil. Not Netanyahu, not the government. The people are sick. They don't want us to see it. well, not all the people, right? Like, I mean, just fucking, again, this if this is true, X has disabled Israeli posts, which we can search here. Disabled auto translation of Hebrew. Gronk said Hebrew translation was disabled on X, but it's not. So the problem is not hate-filled Hebrew language. So this is, debatable, right? So these are just things that people post. I don't fact check them anymore because I hope you guys realize that, nothing's real. Like we live in an illusionary world. Maya and Sanskrit. But to say that it's all everything that's being said, because I know that there's not, because there's Facebook groups of people in Israel that have posted valuable information that is pro-Palestinian. Jewish Voices for Peace and some of these other ones. There's like 3 or 4 of them that I've belonged to for a long time, and I don't really pay attention to it. Because I mean, I knew what was going on years ago. So so it turns out this isn't true, but if it was true, then it would be just for the bad people. So I went to eat lunch, and I was about to tape. So I was watching the news in the background, and I was using the remote to tape some basketball games tonight. And I hit the wrong numbers, and I ended up on a shopping network, and not one it was a jewelry one, not jewelry.com, whatever it was. And they had a citrine cross, a cross with citrine, gemstones, platinum set, with a chain bedazzled in also gemstones, not precious, but whatever they were, those different types of whatever they might be, amethyst or some of these other things. Bedazzled in gemstones for $9.99. Now, I'm not a jewelry expert. I like watching these shows. I used to make fun of them. You guys, I gotta do that again. They have the, it's I guess it has to. It's just great. But these fine ladies that they provide on the show who are experts say that it's undervalued. It's actually worth $120, not $9.99, just for the chain alone, never mind the cross. So those are the kind of deals, pre-Christmas deals that are going on there. If you're in the market for a citrine bedazzled cross with a gaudy steel, some kind of silvery chain that has semi-precious gemstones glued onto it, there's something available for $10, right? Not at the dollar store, but at the... Let me see if I can find the thing here. So this is the Caris Brazilian citrine cross necklace. It's not the exact same necklace. The necklace looks similar. Block. There it is. It's only $12.99 here. The chain looks a little different. Like this has got citrine. The chain that I saw was quite different. These things here. Shopping. So this is similar here. This one is on Etsy. It's not worth the $120. Well, here's one for $149. That's a little bit. This is the one that this is $13 on Etsy. So it's still a steal at $10. It's not worth $120 though, just in case you guys are. I mean, those ladies. I don't know. I don't want to call them liars or anything, but I think they were overpricing this thing. I mean, look at this magnificent citrine, sterling steel, silver pendant, gemstone pendant. Fucking amazing. Like, these are the kind of deals you get now, Christmas time. If you're in the market for a citrine... I mean, nothing says you love Jesus like a citrine cross. Here, look at this motherfucker. Look at this. Amethyst inside there. Capodimonte fine porcelain. No, this is, what do they call those? That's, look at this thing. Topaz cross pendant for women. Topaz... Those got to be cubic zirconians. I mean, look at those zirconians sparkle. Like, holy shit. I mean, this is the kind of Christmas deals you're getting. Like, this just says, I love Jesus, right here. I mean, nothing says Jesus like cubic zirconians. Going back to this Candace Owens thing, where she was saying that she was threatened. And she has this story now where she says, it seems like they killed our friend in front of us, her and Tucker Carlson, just so they can say, hey, you guys shut up, because this will happen to you. Which is a weird way to put it, because very myopic, right? And that's why it should have been you, this guy saying it should have been you. But this is what I want you to hear here. She talks about how she was fired when she went and did the Bridget McComb thing and when it started to be a little bit anti-Israel immediately. She thinks the two things are tied together, which is, again, the Bridget McComb thing is a nothing burger. It's no big deal. Like that, her being exposed as a man, it's a little bit of a scandal in France, but France is not, they'll survive that shit. They got a lot of weird shit going on there. And the rest of the world doesn't give a shit. So it's nothing like the Israel stuff with America, the destabilization of an empire. But she talks about how Charlie backed her.
Looking into the Brigitte Macron story. That was in March of 2024. It was on March 13th, 2024, that I did the very first ever episode on Brigitte Macron, right? And then, wham, I am fired within 10 days. It's a pretty quick turnaround. Charlie, of course, was a staunch defender of mine. Immediately when I got fired, publicly and privately, he held my back, and then suddenly donors start to squeeze him and tell him that I can no longer hit the stage at Turning Point's AmFest. They want me gone from the Turning Point roster, right? I bring my new independent...
So, why the fuck do you care about this piece of shit? The guy was a fucking piece of shit, right? He was a staunch defender until his shekels were dried up, right? He defended the shit out of me, but then they threatened his shekels. And so then he backed off, and then he was going to bring her back when he started to realize he was on the wrong side of this thing. When he was getting desheckled. We heard all that stuff. But, what kind of friend is that, right? What kind of truther is that? The guy who defended you for a little bit, and his donors called up and said, hey, no more Candace, or you lose your shekels. And he completely caved. Because of course he did. He's a piece of shit, right? So this whole thing you're doing, why are you doing it? For a guy who jilted you, right? He stabbed you in the back. You were right about Israel, and I don't know about the Brigitte Macron thing, but who gives a shit? But either way, these shouldn't have been fireable offenses, and back then they were. And now, in some ways, they would be too. The TPUSGAY, I was just looking at their channel. And they show up every day making fucking content to get 8,000 views for a fucking company that used to make hundreds of millions of dollars. And they have nothing. And, they think if they just keep on cranking out shitty videos, that some people will come back to them. You've lost your audience over there. I'll cover that maybe next video. I've been covering it a lot. I'll just show you their channel. I did this with Heartfulness. When I watched Heartfulness just buy views. They'd have 100,000 views, 18 comments. 10,000 views, 18 comments. 2,000 views, 18 comments, right? No matter what, it was the same. They're getting the same comments, and they were shitty comments, with no substance, just emojis. No one's watching you. You're not interesting. People judge you. And so, Charlie Kirk was a piece of shit just for all the stuff he did, and he was, Charlie Shekels. That's a great nickname for him. He was shackled up more than anybody. And, why is she pursuing this thing he was some great friend to her, right? She was in a low moment where she was fired and she was being ostracized and attacked. She talks about going through a tough time. And Turning Point wouldn't have her on. She was, he disavowed her just like all these other people did. And so, maybe deep down she's just enjoying destroying his thing. Now because he fucked her and she's in whatever, just she's getting paid by, she's being run by whoever she's being run by doing this thing. But there's always a backstory, and her backstory is Charlie Kirk. She was a really good friend to her. She really loved Charlie, and now she's trying to do what Erica and no one of these other people want to do and find out the truth about his murder. But that shouldn't be the case because the guy abandoned you at your moment of crisis. He Judased you. He took the fucking shekels. He took the 30 pieces of silver when you were being, destroyed as a whatever you were back then. you're fired by fucking Ben Shapiro, which is, I mean, I don't even know why you'd be on that fucking show in the first place. You said you had you have a superpower of being to evaluate people. But I mean, the whole thing is why bother, right? I'm glad she's doing it because every time, these infighting things, the coming apart of the MAGA and the right wing is great, and Trump is imploding. We already know the left wing has nothing to offer. And, it'll get to the point where people realize, we are, the people that are leading us are completely fucked. I mean, the sheeple will be sheeple. Like, there's nothing you can do for them. But there are people who are, on the fence, who kind of see things and even in the truth community, when you realize, all right, so this isn't going to be turned around. Like, this is done. We thought, that there was some hope for the American system, but not only is there no hope, it's really God's work that the thing be destroyed because we're going in the wrong fucking direction. This thing with Candace Owens that I've been talking about the last couple of videos, there's inconsistencies in her story, which is the problem, which is what she's finding with all these other people, right? Because, if you have a purpose, like, why do you get up every day? Like, people would say, why do I make videos here? And, part of this is, like, I don't even know anymore, right? Like, when I first started this channel, I was doing various things in terms about the Saj Marga meditation. My family and I, my previous family, which later fell apart, we were going from being suburban people to learning to live on a homestead. And it was mostly documenting that. And there was a website I built and some other things. And it was based in, I had what was called the Shruti, yes, the spiritual experience, where this program was downloaded into my system. And I would build a website. I didn't even know how to use the internet. Like, I taught myself how to build a website. I mean, I wasn't even using websites. I didn't even know, I didn't have internet. Like, I never had been on the internet. Just, my ex had been on the internet, and, most people had. This is in 2005 or 6. The Pranhuiti came in 2003. But I built a website, I wrote a book, I developed these seminars and, all these things. And phase 1 was Shruti counseling based in the Shruti. I had a master's degree in counseling. And that didn't take. And I really just wasn't into counseling people. By that time, I was just over that whole profession. And the second phase was Pockets of the Future. And this YouTube channel came from that. And the YouTube channel was sort of supposed to be a sidebar to be, like an outreach to promote some of these other things. But, the message was a spiritual one. And it's, it's still inside me, the Shruti, the program, or whatever, this work that I was supposed to disseminate. And so that's a big part of the motivation. It is a job. There's financial reasons, and it's a job. And it's habitual. I get up every day, and it's habitual. And I feel like, I'm sure that the idea that only spirituality will save this world is a correct one. Not that saving the world's the point. You don't do spirituality to save the world. It's a true statement, but that's not why you do it. You do spirituality because it's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to have a life of your soul. Your soul has a it needs to be expressed. And because of that, you connect to the divinity within you, and everyone's supposed to do that. I mean, that's like why you incarnate here. And almost nobody does, because their egos and past samskaras and, fucked up world at a fucked up time in history. But, these are like some of the motivations. And then I could give specific motivations why I cover this. And some of it's just, you have to look at this as you got to give people what they want. Some of it's viewer based or whatever. But, those are like the motivations, right? Now, Candace's motivations, according to what she's saying, in these videos is that she was good friends with Charlie Kirk, and his murder is based in lies, and no one else is. All of his friends and his wife and all these people, and she's not saying his wife, but that's obviously part of it, aren't doing shit about it. So she feels like she needs to do it for a friend, but the guy wasn't her friend. I mean, he was very selfish, very narcissistic, as she is in various ways. All these people who want notoriety and fame and these things and want to be seen, and so then what becomes her motivation, right? Like if that isn't true, then what is it? Like, your motivation is a big part of everything. You should understand a person's motivation whenever you're in any kind of relationship, any kind of whether you're going into business with people or you're getting married or you're, any number of things. It's hard to understand people's internal worlds, and you have to really figure out what people's motivations are, because oftentimes people misrepresent their motivation for doing something, and that's very problematic because your motivation for doing something is what makes it pure, what makes it, your intentions, your intentionality. It's what makes it go in a good, positive direction. If it comes from egoism and narcissism or third-party payments or, being shackled, then there's going to be, a deviance to it. And you can't sustain it, and it's not something based in divinity. You're off the farm. You're going against God's will. So anyway, there's that. Somebody left a great comment today. Only one comment. Clearly, you're all a bunch of crap. Clearly, you're all a bunch of crap. Now, I know that seems to be directed at me, but could be, I don't know, just a poorly worded comment. But, just sloppy, And so I want to get to cribs. So, I talked about this in the past because I've been talking about circumcision and how, the foreskin is an organ. It's an organ that's designed by God. It's a part of your existence. And it's not something like, oh, we don't need that anymore. Everything in your body is there for a fucking reason, right? Everything in your body has a purpose, and the allopathic medicine wants to make you believe that you can just take out your appendix or your tonsils or your thyroid or your gallbladder, and it's no big deal. But they serve a purpose. It also there's a vibrational aspect to it. It's created by your soul, your body. And so you're missing something, right? And so, the Bible sucks, which I've documented, and, either get that or you don't. But the Old Testament specifically. But the foreskin thing is a trauma to all males, and all of us that have it done, it's 80% of us, we don't know how we would be if it hadn't been done. We don't know how it's affected us because it's done at such a young age. And most of us, aren't upset about it, because it's not like we had something and we're now feel like we're missing it, right? And it's kind of a silly thing to be upset about in the sense of, it's just, it happened so long ago for whatever when you were infant, and then, whatever. But you read about it and you see that some trauma has affected you in a certain way. And so along with that, there's the idea of cribs. A crib is a cage. And I'm saying this because, interesting enough, I watched this movie called Sovereign. It's playing for free on Hulu right now. And it is really kind of a hit piece on truthers. The guy, the main character, kind of just becomes a piece of shit throughout different levels. He's not really the main character. His son is. And he's affecting his child poorly. I mean, they really do a number on they give real truth messages, which is always disturbing when they get the truther part accurate, but then they make the person a murderous scumbag piece of shit, right? Which the guy ends up being. But in that, there is a cop that Dennis Quaid plays the cop, and his son is pampering his baby who's crying because of the crib, right? And the idea behind a crib is, and what the official allopathic position is, that you put a child to the crib and they start crying because, your child, especially the mother-child relationship, the child has been inside the mom. And just like with various, you see these animals like kangaroos that have pouches and some of these marsupial animals, and a lot of these animals are like not ready. We have baby rabbits here, and every once in a while Tulsi finds them. and they're in some nest somewhere, and the mother comes and nurses them like twice a day. They're kind of independent, but their eyes are closed and they're helpless. They can't walk. Puppies, their eyes are closed. They're blind. They're not ready to be off on their own. They go in some den somewhere. But young babies need to spend times with their mother. We see this with the hen. It's about, a couple months maybe with the hen, maybe 4 weeks depending, when the mother, broody hen has a bunch of chicks following her around. And then after a while, she's just like, fuck you, get away from me. And starts pecking at them when they chase her, like there's a breakup. But when you have a cow and you milk the cow and you separate the calf from the mom, it's fucking brutal. The mom and the calf, and if they can see each other and they're, it's just really bad. It's like a week and then they kind of get over it. But, it sucks. And, the same thing with these babies. They want to be with their moms. They want to sleep with their moms in beds, these kind of things. Whatever it is. And human beings are social creatures. And you put them in a cage. It's a fucking prison cell. It's a cage for babies, right? And, it's not, because it's got bars on it. And so, people just assume this is what you're supposed to do. And the baby starts crying because it wants connection. Not just nursing, it wants to be near the mom. And there's research done by this guy. Geez, I can't remember. I used to talk about this guy quite a bit. The third master Sizemore system talked about this guy. Is it Dr. Pierce? I think his last name's Pierce. And he had these articles about heart-brain research. His name was Joseph Chilton Pierce. At ChatGTP, I asked about Dr. Pierce and heart-brain research, and ChatGTP failed me twice. And then I knew I had a folder called Heart, and I knew I had some images of him, but when I pulled up the folder, which often happens, I remembered his name. And there's videos about him. He died in 2016, English guy. But he did extensive research on heart intelligence, right? The heart has its own intelligence. I've talked about this, feelings of love. It's where you connect to God. We meditate the heart and Saj Marg, the meditation I do. And the guy, they found if they took two heart cells, they were able to keep them, alive for whatever period of time, they would vibrate next to each other in rhythm. There's a consciousness there. And you can go watch the videos and all these things. But, the human heart there's sensitivities and things like this. And what happens is the child desperately wants connection with the mom, and it cries because it's missing something. And you're supposed to ignore the child, and you're basically breaking the child. And, it does damage to the child. The child is, people think the child has to sleep on its own. It needs to be toughened up. I mean, that was the message in the movie from Dennis Quaid to his son. His son, it's like the cop's son is being steered in the wrong direction the same way as the truther's son. Like, this is part of the, this movie, Sovereign. But, it's another way that they're making you into less human person. Like, you're getting rid of your spiritual connections. It's hardening you, just like with the foreskin operation. And there are things that are done throughout your existence that they know that does damage. Like the people who started this now, not now so much, it's just become, commonplace. But the people who introduced foreskins, introduced circumcision, and introduced the crib. I mean, the crib is essential for women working. A mom gets so little leave time here in America. They can get up to a year or two. There's, these developmental research that's done, and it's, it ignores the mother-child bond. They want to minimize the role of the mother, the importance of the mother's heart and the baby's heart and the connectivity that exists in utero. And, just in life in general, and the baby's taught to love and makes the baby sensitive to love and God's love. And, without all these things, people can't connect to the divinity within them. They can't become real human beings. They get hardened. Can be turned into killers and, not just murderers, but, corporate killers and, heartless people. And, they don't develop the heart at all. which dims their connection to God. So there's all these things that are done intentionally. And they're, like I said, they're just, nobody knows why anymore. But they're in place, and people just go along with it. And, but you hear the baby crying, and it affects you, especially the mother, right? It affects everybody. Hearing a baby cry, it's hardwired into your system. You want to make it fucking stop, right? It really is disturbing. And you're supposed to just, tough it out for a week or so, and then the baby breaks, and it gets used to, gets this idea of learned helplessness. And no longer, the crying doesn't elicit any kind of response, so it stops doing it. But still, deep down, it has this craving to be connected to the mom and not be left alone. And, that's just not the kind of society we live in. Okay, so, I, found this thing here. Here it is. Got to make this a little bit bigger. And, it's here. There was these, Master Chargy wrote a lot of letters to people. He was St. Paul in a past life. So this was and he was more evolved in this life. And so, he died in 1983. 2014. And someone from Denmark wrote him about childcare. I think she wanted to go back to work or something. And so this was his response to her. It is nice that you have free time with R, the name of the kid. Little babies must have all their time with their mother. And even when they are 6 or 7 years old, should not be separated for long. That is what we feel here in India, and I think it makes them feel less lonely and frightened when they grow up. Love is such a wonderful thing, and if one is loved right from the cradle, such a person can become anything in this life. The more and more I see power of love, the more I wonder about it. People laugh at love, but it is the most potent force in the world, like a small jet of water, constantly falling on the hardest rock and wear it away. So patient, faithful love can overcome any resistance and overpower any other power in the world without corrupting and demeaning that which it conquers. So it was an interesting response, especially this idea of the mother-child bond. But, our society is meant for a purpose. Like, they're churning out workers, that's part of it, soldiers. They're churning out, dumbasses, dumb fucks, sheeple. There's things that are done throughout your life to dib your senses, to break you. School is very similar. Being locked up in a building, learning a bunch of shit that most of it's worthless. In a way that they make education and learning unpleasant. So you start rejecting it, like you start hating, the idea of education and learning. And so all the things that people complain about schools, and it's more like they're built like prisons. Another kind of lacked facility. You go in through security in so many schools, and you're stuck in that building. You can't leave. It's kind of suffocating. They look like prisons oftentimes. The classrooms are, different than the cells, but the whole thing is, the principal's like a warden, and there's just, layers of, there's a social credit score, there's behavioral management program at every school, just like there is in prisons, a reward system and all the rest of it. And so this was another quote by Chargy here. I just happened to see this. It says here, therefore we see society in total chaos. I think to guide youth properly, we must have more of them in the ashrams where we can look after them wisely, lovingly. What parents do is to look after them neither wisely or lovingly, but with fear. I hope this child will not go astray. My son will not go astray. In quotes. He's quoting people. He often says this kind of things. Things like that you see. We are utilizing the youth. We are trying to train them with fear because we don't know how to train them with wisdom. So unless the parents are already wise, really speaking, they should not have children. Because when you cannot look after yourself, what right have you to have a child which you cannot look after? No, it's a natural consequence when we marry, again in quotes. No, it's a natural consequence when we marry. We like to have children. Yes, but can you look after it? So we have to train ourselves to be wise parents, wise mothers, wise fathers, do what is good for the child. But we pamper the children. When a child weeps, we put a bottle in its mouth. It may go hungry, it may not go hungry, or you put what they call pacifiers, he demonstrates. This is a talk he's giving, just to keep the child quiet. And in the habit of putting the child in a separate room in the crib just because the husband and wife want to be together all the time, it is the most destructive thing because the child grows up in loneliness. When it is lonely, it is afraid. Till the child is 8, it must sleep with the parents, and the parents must sacrifice their sex life to the welfare of the child. Much of the problem comes because parents do not want to sacrifice. And again, 8 years old to me is a little bit old, but you know, the idea of a family bed, at least for the first couple of years with the child, you know, if there's multiple children in there, you know, it's something where kids have to graduate to sleeping on their own at some point. And I think 8's kind of old. But at least in the years that the child's nursing and the formative years of your first 2 years. But whatever, you know, this is a different point of view. Much of the problem comes because parents don't want to sacrifice problems of the youth, the problems imposed upon them, thrust upon them by feeling, you know, selfish parents will only look after their own happiness, their own welfare, their own need to sleep. So what about the youth? So today I want to talk about the youth. I want to talk about parenting. And if you want children, you must be willing to sacrifice. It's no use the husbands say mothers will sacrifice. They are born to sacrifice. And then he goes on from there. So when they wanted women to go into the workforce, there was an indoctrination that happened, and there was these things put in place. And, you know, what about the children? Well, you know, they wanted to get the children out of the house as soon as possible so they could indoctrinate the children, right? Because, you know, the mom would have such an influence. Mothers have such an influence on children in traditional societies. And, you know, men have always maybe tried to pervert that in some way or use it for their own advantages, you know, leaders and things like this. But certainly in our society, one way was to get the mother out working. So the baby was then in daycare and, you know, preschool, and they have all these various places. Now they want to get the kids into school, pre-kindergarten, preschool, nursery school, you know, whatever they call it now. You know, they have Head Start. You know, get that kid in school at 2 or 3 years old, give them a head start, you know, and those schools suck. They're like little prisons. And a lot of it's about the mother and the father having these jobs, right? There's no longer growing up on a farm where everyone would work together, where the kid would be out there learning valuable skills and learning how to, you know, do things and becoming a fully functioning human being. It was so important for our kids to be able to milk cows and do these other things, right? You know, I mean, it was important, but then now I don't think it is at all for them. So maybe it'll be important for them again. But, you know, it was the way that things used to be done, where the kids would be working alongside their dad and their mom and learning skills and doing things and feeling like they were contributing. That's the best part. The kid feels like it has value because it's like, oh, I'm a contributing member, and they feel good about themselves. And so that doesn't exist. You go to school and, you know, you get these grades and, like, you know, every couple of months, and, you know, it's like, well, I mean, if you don't value the grades, which many kids don't, and the parents don't really care about them, there's no reward for your work. You're, you know, learning things. A lot of it, the stuff you're learning, you're not going to use. I mean, it's good to get educated, but a lot of it's, you know, it's just killing time, especially with the way things are going now. You know, there's so many remedial, you know, dysfunctional kids and behavioral issues and ADHD. The kids have to be on drugs now to get through a day of school because they're all fucked up from the stuff that they're eating, you know, the foods they're eating, all the things that they're doing. And so, you know, this is all about, you know, we want parents to work, and we want to indoctrinate the kids, and we want control over the kids, and we want to influence the kids and tell them what life's about, and we don't want the parents doing that. And, you know, and the kids grow up and they rely on the government and their peers and social media influencers now to tell them what life is about and why they're there. And they're like, fuck you to their parents because deep down they feel abandoned by them. They don't even know why, because they, you know, they can't remember being in a crib and crying and their parents never came to them. And so there's a break in the relationship, you know, all these kind of things. the circumcision, I mean, all these things. And this is why we have such a fucked up society, because they, have done things to break the family up, to break the relationships up, to damage the etheric heart so you can't connect to God, damage your sensitivity, your intuition, and turn you into some sort of, a one-trick pony who does one specialized job that's boring as fuck, doesn't pay enough, and then, you're just a cog in the wheel. You check out, you become an NPC, you lose your consciousness, you lose your life force, and you just, trudge through life like a zombie, and, this is purposeful. And all these little things that they've done that we don't even think about or question are a part of it. So anyways, I wanted to include that because of 2 videos ago, but here it is now. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.